Hello, you magnificent bastards! Glad you tuned in. I'm Dr. Layman. This is the second episode of Talking to the Left. I'm joined by one of those super dangerous feminists, Claudia Brown. She's got a YouTube channel, she makes videos. And I'm also joined by my co-host, Nuckelavee, a permanently drunk and angry Scotsman. And also, this stream is a sort of reveal because Aiden and I are now together. So the whole thing with starting a stream on her channel is kind of meant to show that we're like an item by now. Yeah. So the more you know, VIP news. In this topic, in this talk, we'll mostly talk about feminism and AI. And I'm also joined actually in a very open context. Basically, anything goes: video games, leftism, academia, research, theory, activism. Everything goes. If you'd like your thingy to be noticed, drop me a super chat or have a really good point with many exclamation marks. Right. And with that said, Miss Ranting Feminist, why don't you tell us something about yourself?
Hi. So I'm basically on here just trying to basically I started my channel because I saw that as you're probably aware, a lot of content on YouTube about feminism is pretty negative. So I kind of just wanted to make things a little more a little more positive and sort of show the other side of things a bit, because I think too often it's kind of been a bit one-sided negative, and it's like, hey, look at this blue-haired feminist. For those of you who don't know, I used to go by Ranting Feminist, and it was sort of me being ironic and joking, and my old avatar was like this little thumb-looking thing with like blue hair that would just be like screaming, and that was a joke, but everyone took it seriously, so I realized that it was actually a huge branding mistake, so I changed it. I've gone through a few iterations of that.
Okie dokie. So now you know how to dox her. Thank you for being here, Claudia. We can end the stream right now.
No, it's not a dox. I was Ranting Feminist. Claudia, yeah.
Claudia, so
yeah.
Tell me then, if you're Claudia Brown, then why is your hair blue?
I was not prepared for that.
Debunked.
Exposed, debunked.
Debunked. Feminism just went back 200 years. Get fucked.
Oh shit! Now we've got to fucking get married.
Thank you for your hot take, Naka. I, as always, appreciate it, even though I absolutely despise you. So, I'm really not all that well read on feminism. Like, actually, I'm woefully underread for such a sort of important topic in our day and age. But I know that there are various types of feminism. Where would you place yourself?
It's kind of hard to talk about, I guess, because there's such misunderstanding around feminism. I'm definitely not first or second wave, because people go, oh, you're more like a second wave feminist. And it's like, no, not really, because, you know, I think people misunderstand them as in like, oh, well, those are the good waves. These are the, you know, third wave is the bad one. But second wave goals were accomplished pretty much. So it doesn't really make sense to be a second wave feminist after the second wave goals have been accomplished. So I'd say I'm a third wave feminist. I'd say intersectional, but people very, like, they really misunderstand what that means, because they seem to think it means like, you know, all white, you know, cis straight men are like living in beautiful conditions and just have mansions and everything that they want, and that's not what the theory means, because that's obviously not true. So I don't really call myself intersectional on YouTube, just because I feel like people totally get the wrong idea, and it's sometimes better not to have a label to sort of get your foot in the door before people just sort of yell at you.
I mean, I really get that, actually. Because it seems to be, let me start this way. I think that feminism is one of those things that's extremely loaded to a certain degree, where if you say, for example, on the internet, hey, I'm a classical liberal, that with a few exceptions, nobody will really bat an eye. Some people will think it's cringy, but you know, that's kind of it. But if you say, hey, I'm a turf. What do I know? Some radical form of feminist that also entails supremacy. That will get you a lot of hate. So I kind of get that. Now, the really interesting thing is you used the term wave, like second wave, third wave, something like that, and I've seen a lot of objection to those terms in the sort of feminist sphere, both on YouTube and on Twitter. Can you tell me something about that?
To be honest, I'm not that familiar with that sort of aspect because most of the literature I read isn't really describing waves or anything like that. It's mostly sort of about the most of what I read is more like the kind of statistical information about what's going on today and that kind of thing, and less so, I guess, about the in-depth stuff about the theory. I have read a little bit about the waves and, you know, patriarchy and that kind of thing, but I guess my approach isn't as theoretical, like about the theory of patriarchy and all that. Because, sorry, keep clearing my throat. Like, regardless of whether patriarchy theory holds up or anything, we're still seeing certain problems arise. So I feel like it's more pertinent to face the problems. And it's kind of like where I don't really focus too much on the labels because I don't know, like my approach is a bit different, but I don't know. I imagine the problem with the waves. I can just imagine it would be that there are some overlapping sort of goals or ideas, and you know maybe like because this is hard to talk about because like I sort of have things like I'm remembering as I speak, but like in my country, for example, the second wave sort of feminists, or as they called themselves, the Femocrats, got into government and started making some changes towards women's equality, adding legislation and doing a lot of really good stuff. But about a decade later, then a right-wing government got in that wasn't exactly pro-feminist, and they sort of just slowly chipped away at things that were put in place. And also there were things that they outright just destroyed. Like there was like a sort of section that was taking statistical data on women's equality sort of information, and they completely obliterated that, and that meant that all the records were gone as well. So even if you did reinstate it the next time with a new government, you'd be missing so much history and everything. And so that's kind of where some of what the second waivers did was actually undone and was never actually brought back. And so I guess there is an issue there because it implies like the second waivers accomplished all of their goals and that they stayed accomplished, but legislation can be very temporary, as you're probably aware.
Oh,
but
yeah,
I guess
absolutely.
that's where I could imagine it being a problem.
Oh yeah, yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense. So you said reading stuff. You said statistical stuff. If I had absolutely no idea what feminism is about, where should I start reading? And no, the second sex is not an acceptable answer. Give me something obscure. Give me something obscure.
Okay, well, something obscure, I guess, might be from my country. I've been reading at the moment. I still haven't finished reading The Misogyny Factor, but there's a lot of really good statistical information. That's actually where I was reading about the Femocrats, as they called themselves. The only issue
the
there is,
Femocrats.
yeah, that's what they
That
called
is
themselves. It's a bit
that's
of a
either a
joke.
fantastic meme or actually kind of frightening. I don't know which one, but please continue.
Yeah, it was just like it was a bit of a joke because they, you know, I remember reading about this, but she was saying that they were always trying to get shit done outside of being in that system, the democratic system of like, you know, working in the government. And then they realized nothing was really getting done. So they joined the government in the hopes that if legislation would change, attitudes would change with them. But it's kind of a depressing thing you're reading because she's sort of reading about how, like, because a lot of people didn't want to move away from these outdated ideas, a lot of their work got undone. So yeah, but it's a really interesting book in some ways, but it is a little dry when it comes to the statistical information, which is why it's taken me so bloody long to read it. There's also a book I'm reading, Fighting Islam, which actually goes into a lot of history about feminism within Islam, and I'm not pro-Islam because I know a lot of people assume that you're pro-religion when it comes to Islam because you're on the left at all. I'm kind of anti-theist just generally, but I'm not like the kind that's like going to shove it down someone's throat who's religious, because I think that's kind of just being a dick. Like, so I'd say I'm like a passive anti-theist. Like, I'm not going to be like, oh, wrecked Christians, and like be in your face about it. But anyway, I found Islamic feminism kind of interesting because they're approaching it from a different angle, which is like, hey, these quotes in the Quran kind of suggest that maybe we should treat women as equals and that kind of thing. And it's just really fascinating to read. I've been reading so far. Also, actually, it goes into the stories of various Muslim women who are fighting for women's equality. So I found that really fascinating. Also, reading about how their work does end up traveling to countries where they're not really allowed to write about this kind of crap. And, you know, so it's helping women there because they're able to read this sort of theory and then they can use that to, you know, argue in favor of their rights because they're able to have access to the sort of freedoms that women in our countries have. And so that was really interesting. Also, the author said that she didn't just interview women she agreed with because she didn't really want it to be like, here's a list of my favorite people. She wanted it to be like representative. So I found that really interesting as well, because I think that's the right approach to have when you're talking about something like Islamic women fighting for women's equality. So anyway, that's a fascinating read. There's another one. Cordelia Fine is a author I was recently told about, and she's got some really cool looking books. I bought one recently. I haven't read it yet, but I'm really excited to, because it's basically called Testosterone Rex, which despite the title, it actually sounds really interesting, because it's sort of about how some things have probably been overstated with the effects of testosterone. And I'm curious to see what she has to say about it. So yeah, anyway, that's about it for now.
Okie dokie, I'll add them to the description later. As a short warning, Nuckelavee is a very creative person and he's doing all the technical stuff. So I have no control over the stuff that's happening on screen.
I like crayons.
He likes crayons. He's posting some
like
memes.
It. I like it.
By the way, my takeaway from that was Islam is brilliant. I just love Islam.
Yeah, fighting Islam. I thought it was a bit like, because when I first saw it, I thought, oh, a bit cringy. But then, like, you sit down and start reading, it's actually really interesting. Because she also talks about Islamophobia if people are worried that this is just going to be bashing on Islam. It's not. It's like, you know, it's very balanced, I think. Even though she is a Muslim, and she doesn't sort of shy away from talking about sexism she has faced. Also, people are saying farting for women's equality. By the
way, I did hear it as farting for women's equality when you said it.
Fighting.
So
I
did
swear,
I, and I thought
really?
I mean, it kind of makes sense because in many cultures, men farting is totally okay, but women farting is still kind of a taboo. So I didn't want, you know, I'm reserving all assumptions and value judgments.
No,
so I thought, hey, why not?
Said fighting. Is it my accent?
Yeah.
Yes.
It did sound. I'm like, what the fuck did she just say? Farting for feminism?
Fighting.
Not
farting. Fighting.
To be fair, I have seen feminist art. It isn't the craziest thing I've ever heard of.
I mean, I actually kind of imagine it, to be honest.
Yeah.
So it's now we're talking about Islamic feminism. That's something that's really interesting to me. So, from my perspective, as someone that's not very well educated in this entire thing, I very often find both the left in general, with of course exceptions, and feminists to be, say, apologetic of Islam to a certain degree. Have you made this similar experience, or would you say that they are just being fair towards Islam? And I could give you examples if that makes you.
Sometimes people are a bit too forgiving and they don't engage critically. But I'd say it's kind of because we see this sort of on both sides. I think there's a bit of a problem because on one side, I feel like some people are a little too harsh on Islam, where it's like they feel like it can't exist peacefully because of like some inherent nature it has. But I don't quite agree, just because I think it's because I'm quite biased. I grew up around a few Muslim people who were just lovely, and like they weren't like bad people. So I kind of dislike when there are particular people on the right who characterize all Muslim people as like ticking time bombs, not so figuratively. So
yeah, absolutely.
yeah, like because some people on the right are basically saying things like, "Ah, oh, damn, Muzzies terrorists," and like I think that's where the left ends up sort of being reactionary in that stage and saying, "No, Islam is perfectly fine. There's no problems in it at all," and then it just is kind of like, yeah, well, I mean, all religion kind of has a sexism problem, and in Islam, I think that conservatism in their countries has kind of led to a lot of really extreme kind of misogyny in their sort of in certain aspects. And it's not all, like, because I know that, you know, hashtag not all Muslims, but you know, there is a problem, and I kind of dislike when people sort of totally downplay any sort of misogyny that happens in Islam, because I feel like they're being reactionary to the sort of right, who can, not always, but sometimes can be kind of a bit too harsh and just say some stupid shit. But yeah, I hope that makes sense.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Have you, by the way, can I ask you, have you seen any of my content? It's completely fine if you haven't. Completely fine, absolutely fine.
I have, but mostly sort of the recent work. I haven't really gone back through your content. I know you're quite opposed to Islam, if that's a fair statement. No, because that might be a bit putting it too strong, but I think
not inherently, like you touched upon it. Like I don't think that anything can be inherently quote unquote good or inherently bad. It really comes down to what people make of it. Just so I clear my position here real quick. I think that the statement "not all Muslims" is absolutely correct, because it would be completely insane to have to have every Muslim acting the same way. That would be just, that's socially speaking impossible. To me, it is strictly speaking a game of prevalences, a game of proportions, really. And what we find consistently is that Islam, whatever the denomination may be, Alevite, Sunni, Shia, it always is far more associated with, for example, violence and or criminality in Europe than most other cultures, most other religions. Now, there is one big exception, which is Eastern Europeans, but that's a topic for another video. But yeah, it's like, there's no, like, I do have my fair share of bias, sadly, because I too grew up around Muslims and I have very negative experiences. But yeah, I don't have this sort of every Muslim is literally Osama bin Laden. No, that doesn't make
if you
any
did,
sense.
I couldn't really speak to you about it, because I just feel like, you know, people who are that far gone, I just can't really relate, where it's like, yeah, but you're telling me, like, you know, the fucking local grocer or whatever that I might know, or just some random
Oh
person
yeah,
I know. I think about them
basically a
like,
terrorist. He's
yeah,
basically a
like
terrorist.
that
Basically.
they're just like gonna go blow shit up because, you know, and you know, people who are peaceful, and you're just like, what? I mean, no, not everyone. Like, and you know, it's weird because like I see it become a bit of a meme between with some people who are more opposed to Islam, where they're like, oh yeah, of course, hashtag not all, but then you're like, yeah, but why are people saying this to you, do you reckon? Like, it's probably because you're coming on here, and yeah, like I don't know, like I think I've seen mixed sort of things about the sort of situation in Europe with violence, so I don't really want to comment either way, because I don't really know what's going on, because, you know, according to some people on the far right who are kind of a bit weird, they're like saying like there are rape gangs going around and like all this other shit, and like there's, you know, if you walk out of your house you're gonna get fucking murdered. Like that's the way they make it sound. But then, you know, you see other reports which is like, oh no, but refugees are underrepresented in crime, and people like, and so I don't really know what's happening, because I'm sort of hearing these really conflicting things coming out of Europe that it's like I actually have no idea what's going on. And so I'm just like, because you get people who like will say things like Sweden is on fire, and you'll get a Swedish person just laugh at them. So that kind of suggests to me that it's being exaggerated by some people. So I don't know.
I think one of the central problems is that it essentially has been taken, at least in the public debate, out of the hands of people that are actually conducting the required research and into the hands of people that have a political agenda, be it one way or another. So you very often find people that try to actively skew statistics to fit their narrative, be it that Islamic migration is literally no problem, it's absolutely fantastic, to people that are trying to make it seem like the end of the world, where it's basically right now Sweden in its entirety is an Islamic state with a blue and yellow flag. Yeah, this is both kind of weird. But what's really fascinating to me is, let's put it this way: would you say that religion should be important to a feminist discourse? Because very often when I talk to feminists, it gets to the point of talking about, for example, Islam or Christianity, and it's kind of interesting to me, because to me a feminist issue was always a sort of gender/class issue, not really a religious one. So what's your opinion on that?
I think it depends on the school of feminism, because there is actually like specific atheist feminism, which takes the atheist perspective on feminism. And it really depends on the person, because there are some people who are very live and let live kind of about religion, or there are actually Christian feminists I've met who are like really deeply Christian people. There are also these Islamic feminists that I've mentioned. I listened to with a couple. It was interesting to hear what they were having to say, but there were bits I disagreed with. Like, I don't really like this whole, oh, hey, well, yeah, this part of the Quran says that slavery is okay, but you just need to basically overlook it and ignore that. And I'm like, I don't know. I feel like if a text says something like that, you kind of need to, question what you're, following. But I say that about Christianity too. I'm not being like singling out Islam. I actually think that all the texts kind of make no sense and just cause division. But I guess for me, it's more like, because with feminism regarding religion, in most religion there has been a very bad history when it comes to gender. Like, because I know when it comes to Christianity, because I know most about Christianity because I was raised a Christian, so I know some people get triggered if you like turn the conversation away from Islam to Christianity, but I'm just talking about what I know. There was these old sort of rules that, like, if a woman was on her period, where she could sit, that she couldn't be in church, and all this bullshit surrounding it. And there is a kind of misogyny to this sort of weird shit around periods, where it's like, I mean, mind you, I'm not saying that we should free bleed or something. So I see that shit and I cringe. But like there's sort of this weird hysteria around periods from religious texts and from religion just generally, and it's just kind of odd. And I feel like that kind of thing just illustrates, a bias against women, especially like when you the story of Adam and Eve, and it was Eve that ate, this kind of thing. So there is a kind of history of misogyny in a lot of religions, and I don't think that should go totally uncritiqued, because like in Catholicism, for example, only a man can be a priest, and they've got a lot of very like their ideas on things like abortion can be quite harmful, and also the ideas of like contraception as well, which I guess isn't solely a feminist issue, because that affects men as well, of course, and it's not necessarily like a gendered thing, but like when you consider the AIDS sort of problem, that is in some countries in Africa, the Pope refused to tell people that they could use condoms because of religion. And so it's things like that that can actually cause quite a lot of harm. But I guess to get it out of the way, religion can be a force for good in some ways, because there's a lot of community aspects to a lot of it. Like there'll be groups that go out and feed homeless people or do good things. So I know that religion isn't totally evil. It's just, I think that some of the misogynistic aspects of some religions shouldn't be overlooked. So I dislike when feminists do that, but I also am not wanting to jam anti-theism down someone's throat, because I feel like that pushes them further towards religion than anything.
So this sounds as if religion is relevant to feminism, but it is not, say, a central, pivotal point of it. Now, what would you say is at the moment, at least in your perception? I can't expect you to speak for all feminists; that will be completely silly. But what was, in your opinion, the sort of most important thing that feminism is currently doing or focusing on?
I think to me it's kind of, because there are so many feminists across the world and there are so many women's issues, it really depends what country we're talking about. Like if we're talking about somewhere where FGM is a real problem, like where it's happening all the time, I mean, it's still a problem in my country, as in like there will be people from those countries who come here and then they'll take their kids home to do that, and you know, that's a problem. But it's not nearly as much of a here as it is in some countries. So in those countries, FGM primary concern. Or if we're talking about countries like Sierra Leone, the issue there might be getting women access to safe sanitation, as in like the you know, pads and tampons, because if you're actually using what they generally have been using, which is like just rags and stuff, because they're usually damp, because they're not exactly hung to dry in places where everyone can see it, if they're damp, then that can actually cause a lot of problems, both with bacteria growth. There's you know, cervical cancer risk goes up. There's a lot of issues there. So there are still issues in our society that do need to be fixed. Primarily, I think the problem with a lot of businesses at the moment is if a woman gets fired because she got pregnant, or because you know, she might get pregnant, there's really not a way to prove that. So I think that societal ideas really need to change for that to really be combated properly, because I feel like currently there's not a whole lot of recourse for women who are in that situation, because I feel like companies can always find a reason to fire you. Like they can give you too much work and then complain that you didn't do it and then fire you. So I kind of dislike this attitude of like, oh, but the law's there, therefore it never happens anymore. And, you know, it kind of ignores the fact that you sort of have to prove that your boss has done the wrong thing here, and you have to prove motive. And, you know, I don't think it's that easy to prove the motive of why somebody fired you. Does that make sense?
Oh yeah, absolutely, absolutely. I mean, the sort of libertarian contra argument is, why should you employ someone that's getting pregnant? But I don't really support that argument. It's just, you know, one of the things that's kind of thrown against it. Would you um give me one moment, because I think no. Okay, sorry. It does make sense. It's really interesting to touch upon different countries having sort of different say issues and things that feminism should focus on. Um, is it okay if I disclose where you're from? Because I would
Oh,
like to talk
yeah,
about your local
Australia.
Right.
Yeah, it's fine.
So what's the currently sort of big issue of feminism in Australia specifically? And before you answer, Naka, could you please clean up the screen? I'm getting dizzy from your bullshit.
Oh,
Please.
shit.
I've evolved.
I looked away because I was like not wanting to get too distracted. Holy shit. That's amazing.
I think I will literally throw up, Naka, please. I've already written you and I hate you. I absolutely despise you. But yeah, Claudia, tell me something about Australian feminism.
Right. So here I'd say it's the employment rates for women between the ages of about 25 to, I think it was 35, 40. I'm sort of quoting this from memory, so I apologize if that's not quite correct. I think the employment rate was about 64%, which I think is really, really low. And from both personal experience and what I've read about it, it does seem that the lack of access to childcare that's affordable is actually a problem. Like, from experience of knowing people who are single mums or something, if they can't find a babysitter, paying for childcare can cost about as much as what they make that shift. Sometimes, like, they're barely profiting from doing a shift at work. So I feel like when you consider the situation some women are in, as far as like, being single mums and all that, they sort of get left with very little options as far as what they can do as a job because of the lack of childcare. And even when they go to school, the kids go to school, like, there's still problems because, children stop school at like 3 p.m. here. So, you've still got a few hours there you need to account for. So it limits the opportunities women can actually have as far as their work. And I think that should be one of the focuses of feminism in Australia. Also, there's cutting of penalty rates. First of all, is penalty rates a term that's used overseas, or is it just here? Because I don't think other
What's
countries
the
use that
exact
term.
penalty terms?
Yeah, penalty rates. It's okay.
Explain it, just in case.
Yeah, I'll just explain it anyway. Basically, penalty rates are extra pay you get for the weekends or doing overtime, that kind of thing, or working public holidays. So if I work on a Saturday or a Sunday, usually I'll get about 1.25 to 1.5 times the rate I would for a normal day. And this is where a lot of people get their wage from if they're in low-income jobs, like if they're in retail or hospitality. So basically the problem at the moment is that, the right-wing government in my country has been making several attacks on the penalty rates, and they're doing it under the guise of helping out small business. But I mean, the funny thing is they're not applying this just to small business. Like, big corporations are able to cut penalty rates as well now, or at least that's what the Liberal government is trying to do. Also, just as a side note, yes, I know it's confusing. The right-wing party in my country is called the Liberal Party. Yeah.
I'm not surprised. That's okay. Everything's upside down in Australia.
Yeah, talking to foreigners about politics has sort of been really confusing because they'll say liberal and mean left, and here that's always meant right wing. So getting called liberal to me, I've always been like, oh, no, I'm not. But
so I would like to touch upon something before we continue with this. Just kind of got to my mind. You were just talking about childcare, right? I'm not entirely familiar with the research on Australian childcare, but in France, England, Germany, and the United States, I actually have a short video segment on that. Childcare actually is a problem. I can give you these citations right after the stream and link you the video thingy if you'd like to. And
absolutely.
And childcare can actually lead to certain behavioral problems, most notably aggression, certain mental issues in the child, that is. And many of those issues become very hard to control, contain, and even to essentially to notice. So you will have kids that suddenly, at the age of 19, start acting up really, really weirdly, simply because of their childcare experience. Now, the actual effect size is comparably small. I think it was, I don't want to throw out the numbers, it is comparably small, but there seems to be a causal relationship between a child being in childcare and certain negative behavioral traits. If I'm being wrong right now, if I forgot something in my papers, I will definitely add it to the description so it will be corrected. But assuming the childcare does have a negative impact on child development, wouldn't you say, or rather, would you say that overrides a woman's right to work and should, quote unquote, force her to be a stay-at-home
Why
mother,
does
for example.
it have to be the woman? Why can't it be the man?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely.
Staying
You
home
made
with
the
the
example
kid.
of single mothers, so that's what I
Yeah.
rolled with.
Well, I mean, I guess the thing is, you know, I don't know if it's the childcare that's the issue, or what are the childcare workers doing that's the problem. Like, because is it inherent to childcare, or is it like something that has come with childcare? Like, is there a problem with the way we're educating childcare workers? I'd rather look at solutions like that than go straight to get back in the kitchen, women. Like,
Oh, yeah,
because
yeah.
I feel like you're jumping the gun a little there, getting a little too
Oh, I wasn't proposing that. I wasn't proposing that. I was just asking. I was just asking.
Yeah,
Sorry
I
if I
know.
came
I'm
across as.
kidding.
Mm.
No, I'm just joking. Sorry.
Oh yeah, yeah.
But
No
yeah,
problem. No problem.
yeah. I think I'd look at solutions other than that and see if maybe there's a way we can figure out what the problem with childcare is, because I feel like you're throwing the baby out with the bathwater if you just completely you know, abandon what could be good. You know, like, because I think childcare isn't an inherently bad thing, and if there is a problem, then it should be analyzed like, okay, what is going on here, rather than just go, okay, it's the childcare, ban the childcare. Because I
Oh
think
yeah,
that's
absolutely.
maybe jumping to a conclusion there, and you
Hmm.
know, it's also like, I guess if you can isolate that factor, um is it that they're being too indulgent at these childcare places? Is it that the workers don't really care about their job? Because we know that childcare workers are paid pretty poorly. Like, at
Hmm.
least in my country, compared to other degrees you'd get and where you'd leave and get quite good money, they're on pretty terrible money here. So is it that the quality of the workers we're attracting with these terrible wages? Because that's also an issue, because if you're not getting paid enough to survive and you're taking care of other people's kids and all that, and also if you can't really attract higher quality workers because workers are paid fuck all, I think that's where the problems might be. Because I don't know the situation for Europe and how much they're paid there, but from what I can gather, childcare is very low paid work, which is ironic given the high prices of childcare.
Oh yeah, there is a really interesting dichotomy there, isn't it? You get paid absolutely. Like, I think it's very similar in Germany. Everything regarding education is getting paid very little, and childcare especially. But at the same time, childcare on a purchase side, like wanting to use childcare, is actually really expensive. That's actually a really interesting point.
It is, because like it's like extremely expensive, and also the workers are paid fuck all. So you're getting like, I wouldn't be surprised if paying people fuck all to do a job where usually they have to have some kind of qualification, where they're probably not even going to be able to pay back student debts or anything like that. You're probably not going to get many people wanting to go into childcare who uh you know, maybe have the skills the skills required. Maybe you're going to have workers who don't really give a crap, because, you know, I find in jobs where I've not been paid as much, I don't really give a shit about customer satisfaction nearly as much as in jobs where I'm getting paid enough to survive.
Hmm.
Like, I've worked in sort of semi fast food places, and in those places, I really just didn't give a shit about the customers being happy because I was being underpaid, wasn't getting penalty rates illegally. But of course, you know, if you complain about this stuff, if your name gets out there as somebody who has reported, you know, your employer doing something illegal like underpaying you, then you ruin your employability from then onward. You know, you find you have a lot of trouble getting a job. So, you know, no one ever speaks out.
Oh yeah, I actually had
And
similar
yeah.
experiences. So yeah, absolutely.
So I really hate this idea of like, oh, but you know, women's equality is achieved because it's illegal to pay a woman less. It's like, yes, illegal things never happen.
Oh yeah,
And you also
it's
look
a
at
silly argument. Yeah.
Yeah.
the fact that, you know, who's keeping these companies on their toes. Like, is there somebody sitting there making sure you know, that people are paying their workers enough? Like, nobody, there's no job for that. Like, so what do you oh, it's frustrating because it's entirely like you have to report your employer for paying you less, and then you've got to prove a motive because you have to prove specifically that they didn't give you extra pay because you're a woman, even if like you could tell on a personal level, like because I did actually work in a place where I was paid less than a male counterpart, and all the men at my work got paid more. And see, you could just argue it was coincidence, or you know that they I don't know, like because you can always make up a reason to pay someone extra. I feel like because I can't prove that it was because they were men that they were getting paid more, but the
It's
women were
actually
getting
really
paid less. So
interesting.
yeah.
Now that you said that, what do you think would be the reasoning behind? Or that was the what would you sorry, blah, yeah, sorry. What would you say is the possible reasoning behind paying you less while everyone else assuming exactly the same qualification, experience, everything, right? What do you think the motivation behind that could be?
Well, I mean, they could argue for seniority, like as far as like if you've been at the business for longer, then maybe they could justify it like that. They could just say that you're not as good a worker, so they didn't want to pay you extra. They could just make anything up. Like they don't really like. I feel like being in the position of trying to prove it, that's where you're like, I have to prove what's in someone else's head, basically. Like I have to prove that they think that as a woman I'm worth less, like paying less. Like I feel like that's a problem. Like I can't be a mind reader and prove that's why I'm getting paid less.
Oh, really, that's really what I was getting at. I was just really curious. Like, would you assume or even like suspect that there might be some sort of inherent sexism in this, in the sense that you're a woman, she'll probably not notice, let's just give her a little bit less money? Or would you say that there might be other considerations, like a very sort of subconscious level of sexism where it's like ingrained that you as a female will probably deliver a lower quality of work, for example?
I think it's not necessarily like because it can be a thing. Like I don't think my boss sat down and went, "Oh, woman, pay her less, fuck her." You know, like I doubt that was the idea. But there's this idea that men need more money because they need to pay for like just things. Women, you know, there's still this idea that working is doing it to have extra cash, like, and it's like a side thing because even though that's not true most of the time now, because most of the time both parties are working because that is how you need to get by now, there's still this idea that the woman's money is sort of the extra money and that, you know, the man's money is what they live on. So I think it's that idea that leads to it because people go, oh, he has a family to support. Whereas like the woman, it's more like, oh, well, she can buy herself some new shoes now or some shit, you know, like it's, I don't know, that seems to be the attitude, at least in my country. I feel like the attitude is that women working, it's because they want to. There's a lot of snobbery as well towards women who can't sort of stay at home and like look after the kids because it's sort of like, oh, my husband earns enough so that I don't have to work, sort of thing, and it's really quite awful.
Can I say a thing?
And yeah, there's, oh yes, go on.
I was going to say, it reminded me at first we talking about when you were saying how if you get fired, well, I mean, if you call out like shady practices of a higher up, that limits your hiring prospects later on. And it reminded me a lot of what Dankula's latest video where he was doing a bunch of analysis of things about with the king, and the king will automatically pick what's best for him as opposed to what's best for the people. And yeah, it's pretty much exactly like that. Like, you don't want anybody that will like take you down a peg. You want just what works for you. And also, sorry, Christ, I became very flamey in my silence. Jesus. Anybody will take you for a ride. Like, that is pretty much the way I see it. It doesn't matter if you're a man or a woman. If people can take you for a ride, they will take you for a ride. And I hate to go with the whole thing that Jordan Peterson loves to go on about with that whole Kathy Newman thing, but it's that agreeable trait, I believe. Like, where like people will take as much shit they can get from you as they can. You know,
I guess I don't quite agree with Peterson just because I feel like there's quite a lack of evidence behind his way of taking the 5 traits, and agreeableness isn't something inherent. I don't think. Like, I feel like this gets talked about a lot as if like, oh, okay, you're agreeable, that's it. You're agreeable forever, and you're agreeable in all circumstances, or And I don't like this attitude that like, if you're agreeable, that's just how you are, as if you came out of the womb like that. When I feel like a society really makes you as a person.
Oh no, well, naturally, it's the way society makes you as a person, but it comes down to who you are at that time, and how much shit you are willing to put up with. If you don't want to get into a confrontation with people, you'll put up with stuff. Like me personally, I've never done well in society because I'll never put up with anybody's bullshit. The only time I'll ever follow anybody is if I'm completely fucking good with them. And I'm okay with what they do. If they try and pull any bullshit with me, it's not happening. I'll tell them to fuck off and I'll walk out the door. Because life, to me, life is, you only get one life. It's too short to put up with other people's bullshit. Have no regrets. Tell your boss to fuck off. Be poor. Yeah. Disclaimer, don't be like Nucker. Don't be like Nucker. don't be sitting posting
I think the problem
gifts.
The problem in our society, I guess, is on one hand you get told that being like that is super cool and it's like desirable to be very assertive, but on the other hand you get corporations punishing you if you do that. It's actually interesting in my country, men don't really tend to last well in hospitality and retail, and it's been suspected that it's because you have to take a lot of bullshit from customers. That men sort of arc up too much and don't take that crap. And it's kind of like depressing though that there are people that are expected to take someone's bullshit, like that I need to see your manager haircut woman going in and being like, I need to see your manager, and like ruining your day. Yeah. And like, yeah, men tend to take that less well, but I feel like it's because for men that's sort of more encouraged, like it's seen as like a good thing, but it's also unfair because you're setting men up for disaster if you teach them that it's great to stand up for yourself. Also, if you stand up for yourself, you're getting fucking fired.
Yeah, no, definitely. I'm just a degenerate. I've never had any goals. Like I said, hashtag don't be like Nucker. Nucker is a fucking mongoloid, and you never want to aspire to be like his mongoloid ass. But the other thing is as well.
Sorry, go on.
Yeah, no problem. When I think about how when you're saying, oh, the man, it's like he's providing for the family and stuff like that, but isn't there, especially in places like America and such, where the significant amount of the population are single mothers? Isn't that very commonplace these days for a mother to be a single mother? I mean, we see it all the time in media and we hear about it where mothers are generally going out there to work or whatever, or is it that most of the single mothers are on welfare or whatever? What's the deal with that, Layman? You got any stats?
Oh, Layman's gone quiet. Did he go to the bathroom or something?
I was talking all the time. Jesus, I accidentally muted my microphone because I was typing, and I was talking all the time, and I was getting really pissy because we were talking openly. I'm so sorry.
You were getting aroused because you were getting cucked in your own stream. That's what
I absolutely was. I'm sorry about that. So the only number that I'm personally aware of is 13.5, I think, 30.5 million single parents in the US. So that is a significant single parent population, but I'm not entirely certain about the percentage of single mothers. But I would definitely assume that they are the dominant majority, probably around the 75% mark, maybe more.
I mean, I'd argue that probably has something to do with the abstinence-only education that the US has, like, brought on by, like, the Republican governments, that there's all these hyper-Christian schools teaching kids that they need to be abstinent and not telling them anything about how pregnancy happens. Like, of course you're going to get more pregnancies when that's happening and more unwanted pregnancies.
That's a really good point. Regarding sex education. So sex education seems to be really important for feminists. What is your personal opinion on when should you start sexual education? As in, what grade, probably, or rather what age? And B, how important do you find sexual education?
I think it's really important because part of women's equality is, determined by her ability to control where and when she gets pregnant, or not where and when, but like when she gets pregnant, or if she gets pregnant, that's kind of what will make or break your career opportunities, really. And so anyway, I guess what age, I don't know because I'm not like an expert in that kind of area and I don't know much about child development. Like I know pretty basic information. I'd say probably about, I don't know, 10. I don't know, like how old. I know fuck all about children, to be honest. But I think developmentally around 10, maybe 12. I don't know. People seem to freak out at teaching kids what sex is, or it's like if you sit a 10-year-old down to tell them what sex is, you're not going to explain it in graphic detail or show them porno and be like, this is what sex is, children. Like, so I just feel like this hysteria is ridiculous. Like, if you just say this sex is when the penis goes in the vagina or whatever, they're going to be like, oh, okay. And that's it. Like, I don't know. Like, I didn't really like have sex ed in primary school, but my parents did tell me what it was very basically. But mind you, they told me younger than they wanted to because the neighbor's kid told me. And they basically wanted to make sure I wasn't like thinking sex was something like really weird. So they told me when I was probably like 4 or 5 and I didn't really give a shit, but it was because the neighbor's kid told me and my siblings what it was, and so they kind of were forced to have that conversation a bit early.
Oh yeah, you always hear it for your older mates and your more scummy mates, and you're like,
yeah,
what? What? It does what? What? Yeah, I feel not.
Yeah.
That's minging. I'll tell you what I'm doing. When I have a kid, I'm going to sit them down and I'm going to go, alright, don't freak out. If anybody does this, and I'm just going to fucking pull down my trousers, nothing there, and I'm going to go, if anybody does that, run. Run, nigga. Just run. If anybody does that is an adult, run. Run for your damn life. Find me.
Yeah.
Get my gun. Some motherfucker's gonna die.
Yeah, I think there is a problem with children not feeling like they can speak out, because often the person abusing them will be like telling them, oh, people will be mad at you and that kind of thing. It's, yeah, I think it'd be good if everyone sort of had a conversation, at least not necessarily like if somebody pulls their pants down or whatever, but like it's more if somebody does something that makes you uncomfortable, you can always tell me, kind of thing. But it's also hard because, you're relying on the child to tell you, and, anyway, I don't really know if I should really go into this.
So I think that we would definitely agree on sex ed. There's a really interesting paper from 2008, I think, by Curler et al. If I find the link, I will put it in the description. It's a comparison between people that have received sexual education and people that have not received sexual education. And what that paper consistently finds that in all age brackets, there is a difference of up to 50% in teen pregnancy, which basically means that sex ed has a very positive effect on reducing the number of teen pregnancies, which in my opinion is very desirable. That's a very desirable effect in my opinion. So we would definitely agree on that.
Yeah, I would agree. I think like, it's not that being a teen who gets pregnant and has a child, it's not that you're automatically going to be a shit parent, but it's more about your prospects, and it isn't an ideal situation to be in for
really
a child.
It's really a game of probabilities, and the deck is stacked against you. You can still be a great parent, and your child can have a fantastic childhood, but let's be honest here, as you said, the prospects are not the best.
Yeah, like it's hard to talk about because I don't want to upset people who are single mums who got pregnant when they were 16 before they really wanted to, because I have met women who've had that situation, and I know that they really are trying their best, but just based on statistics and all that, it's not a good prospect. But the thing is like the fact that it was an unwanted pregnancy, I feel like makes it kind of, Yeah, I feel like when I first got into a stream with somebody in a debate, I think I didn't want to commit to saying that single motherhood isn't a great thing. And I got a lot of shit for that because I think it's because like I was very unprepared and I was really nervous because I had 100 subscribers and I was on Skeptor's channel and he had like a few thousand. So I wasn't used to this much sort of attention from people. I was like, I don't know what I think. I don't know. And I was so nervous. So I just didn't really want to commit to any idea that I brought up. It was an awful stream. So
Yeah,
I want to
we
sort
all
of
have our bad
clarify
streams,
this.
There's
things happen.
there's a feminist issue for the chat. Aiden sold her eggs for a car. I'd sell my eggs for a
Wait,
car.
I mean, could you please stop propagating this myth? I know this is actually kind of bullying her, so please don't.
What is that? No,
Okay.
I've never heard that. What is that? Oh no, well, there you go.
I
Well,
think
in
it's
case
really just,
I don't know. How
just meant to bully.
how do you feel about selling your eggs, Claudia?
Oh, selling your eggs. I mean, I guess like if there are people who are infertile out there, they want eggs. I think it's kind of fucked up to sell it, but like it's kind of like if you're desperate and you really need money, you know, then I guess it's fine. I don't know. I don't really have a strong position either way because I don't really think about it that much.
By the way, is my microphone acting up?
No, it's fine.
Oh,
No, I think
lovely,
it's fine.
lovely. So, I would actually like to touch upon one thing. So we were talking about childcare, single parenthood, and most notably single mothers. You will often hear, especially from the sort of manosphere, men's rights activists, but also from the broad sort of skeptosphere, the claim that many family courts are very clearly biased against men, in the sense that they prefer women when it comes to custody, for example. And it is
Yeah,
true that if we look into the
sorry.
percentage of custody that women do in many countries, namely the United States, Germany, France, and Great Britain, that they receive disproportionate amounts of custody, disproportionate rates of custody. What's your take on that?
Um, well, I think that it's partly because, well, I think I remember somebody saying this once that, like, but how do we know that these men wanted full custody? Is it a case of them wanting full custody and not getting it, or is it just, that, it kind of defaulted to the woman because she wanted custody and he didn't really want full custody? And I think it's also a case of like, I think it could be possible that even if both parties want custody, there is some bias towards the woman looking after the children. But as many feminists will point out, this is kind of the result of sexist attitudes towards women that also harm men as well. Like this idea that the woman is primary caregiver is kind of a sexist idea. So it's kind of just part of the sexist gender roles, but it's unfortunately also biting men in the ass here. So yeah.
So can I ask, why is it that men that want to have their kids and they don't get to, even when they're good fathers and stuff like that, because of that thing, isn't an important issue, but women being CEOs and stuff like that is a top issue and stuff like that for feminism.
When did I say that wasn't an issue? I never said that that wasn't an issue.
Oh no, I'm just thinking, like, why do you think feminism is like that?
Wait, I'm confused.
I'm not following you either right now, sadly.
Because I don't think it's I don't
You
think it's
probably
not an
have.
issue. I think it is an issue that men don't get custody of their children because people assume women are better parents.
Yeah, I know, but I'm saying, as in, why isn't it? Why does it never really come up with all the feminist talking points?
Well, I mean, to be honest, it depends where you're looking, because, I mean, again, it's more like we can't be focused on every single issue that exists. We end up having to pick and choose. Like, I end up picking and choosing a few sort of narrow areas because you can't focus on every gendered issue that exists. And so it's a matter of personal interest and what, personally matters to you. It's not a case of, okay, well, if you don't make your entire movement about this thing, then you don't care about it. And again, the woman CEOs thing, that's a very neoliberal, crappy thing you see BuzzFeed crap on about. It's not really the concerns of the average working class feminist, because that's just this tripe that they trot out. And I feel like it's almost half intentional to try and, dilute what feminism is, so that people think it's this petty bullshit. Or I feel like it has to be intentional at this point, like the way they peddle out this crap, because it just alienates working class people generally. If you're like, oh, but this woman doesn't make as many millions of dollars as her male counterparts, but she still has more money than most people see in their entire lives. So look, that's not my brand of feminism, so I can't really talk about that. I don't agree with that, so I can't
No,
argue in favor of it.
I never thought you did. I just wanted to bring that up and get your thoughts on it about that sort of thing. And yeah, you pointed it out. It is very sensationalized, but I guess that's just what fucking vacuous idiots care about,
Yeah, I think it's these people, sometimes they have their heart in the place. It's just that I really fucking hate the section of feminists that are more concerned about what Beyonce's doing than about, average people, who we make up the 99.9% of the population. I mean, I pulled that number out of my ass, so don't hold me to it. But like, they're focusing on the 1% and, all this crap. And it's like, yeah, but if we have more women CEOs, how does that improve life for the average woman?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I would definitely agree with that. Now, we went over some of these sort of really critical things I wanted to talk about. Would it be all right with you if I went over some super chats? And if you're uncomfortable with that, you can just start screaming at me for being a Nazi or something like that. That could be fun.
Fucking Nazi! Fucking misogynist bigot!
There we go. I missed it.
After I start,
Fuck off, Nuckelavee. Fuck off, Nuckelavee. I'm doing super chats.
No, fuck
money.
you. No, I'll mute you. I can.
The sad thing is, he actually can.
I can mute you. I can take control of this. You could be sitting.
Hey, maybe he'll mute himself. Maybe he'll mute himself again.
Oh wow!
Share your full insights with us.
Well, after I was talking, somebody started doing a super chat about potatoes, and I'm like, I'm no Irish. That's racist.
Okay.
Wait, Claudia.
Thank you for your insight.
When will people stick up for me saying I'm a potato? When will feminism do what I need?
When will feminism cater to my male needs?
When, Claudia? When is it gonna happen?
Right. Okay. So we got a first super chat by Nicholas Ramsey. It's about 17 on 18, maybe. Kissing mouths. I'm kissing you back, my dude. I really appreciate the support. Then we have a super chat by Merc. Merc, hey, how's it going, man? I've had interactions with Claudia. She's been a staple of my Twitter feed. Glad to see her on. So someone likes you, Claudia. That's a good start.
That's so cool.
Then we have a super chat by That Indian Dude. In reference to Telford and Rotherham grooming gangs, Pakistanis view white women are like tissues. You use them and throw them away. Then you marry a good Muslim woman. It is a common South Asian view. Now, would you like to respond to that, Claudia, or should I?
I don't really. I mean, I don't know which group they're talking about. Are they talking just about these people who were like part of this thing that happened recently, or are they talking just generally about?
It seems to be a very general statement about at least Islam or Muslims in Great Britain.
Yeah, I mean, I don't entirely agree, but I think there is that attitude, but I wouldn't want to generalize it to all. I mean, hashtag not all. Okay, that's all I have to say about it. Hashtag not all.
I think it really comes down to a game of prevalence, and from the data that I have at hand, I would say that yes, the prevalence of very overtly hostile attitudes, especially towards outgroup people, that especially fit some sort of marginalized category. So, for example, Islamic attitudes towards homosexuals, Islamic attitudes towards LGBT people, and this counts for basically every notable school of Islam. As I said, be it Alawite, Sunni, Shia, um, it is very negative, and the prevalence is much higher than in non-Muslim populations. But again, I would not say that it is a generally fair statement. You will find, for example, negative attitudes that are actually held by the majority. So, for example, in Great Britain, as far as I know, but my data is a bit outdated, the majority of Muslims does, for example, have a on homosexuality. I think it was like 52% that said that homosexuals shouldn't get married and that homosexuality is inherently immoral. So yeah, there definitely is an issue with that, but I wouldn't say that it is. Uh, hashtag not all. I've got an entire video basically just dealing with Islamic statistics. So if you want more on that, the Indian dude, just click my channel and look for my first face review video. There you'll find it. Now, the next super chat is by Pragmatic Culture. For RF, I suppose for Renting Feminist, what are 3 books you would recommend to understand feminist theory on a beginner, intermediate, and advanced level, respectively?
Fuck, I've been put on the spot.
Yes, and if you right now you're representing the
It's
entirety of
already
feminism.
assumed. It's already assumed I've read 9 books. Oh shit. Yeah, I think I've read quite a bit, but as beginners is difficult. I feel like blogs are kind of a good place to get, like, 'cause you need the lingo if you're going to go into reading feminist books. You need to understand that first, I feel like, and a good way to understand what the terminology means, I think, is blogs. Because if you want to go into reading feminist texts, it's not so much a case of like, oh, these books are good for beginners. It's kind of like if you find blogs that explain what words like patriarchy are referring to, what they mean when they say something like rape culture, because these terms like just get thrown around in feminist literature, so you've kind of got to have an understanding going in. And so I feel like often blogs can be good for explaining what these terms actually mean before you go in, because otherwise you're just going to hear all these terms and it'll either wash over you or you'll, arc up. Because if you're somebody who hears toxic masculinity and assumes that means that masculinity is inherently toxic, that's obviously going to be a bit of a problem. So
I
yeah,
actually have
if
a
that
really
makes
specific
sense.
question to that regarding patriarchy. So I don't know if you know, but I'm a sociologist, so patriarchy is not entirely an alien term to me. But I'm really woefully underread on it. And in one video, I set out on this grand journey to understand patriarchy, and I tried to reconstruct it both historically and on a term level. and I really struggled with finding a proper, coherent, and widely accepted definition and use of patriarchy. Do you have any recommended literature that deals like specifically with the concept of patriarchy in a feminist context?
I wish I did. I don't really read about patriarchy because it's all just kind of convoluted and it doesn't really have much in the way of real world application in most situations. Like, because I feel like there's so many definitions people use of patriarchy that it just kind of gets a bit
There was exactly my
useless.
same impression. It was I think that I identified at least like 3 sort of main branches where you had a sort of Aristotelian use of patriarchy, which had nothing to do with contemporary feminist usage. Then you had a sort of Weberian understanding of patriarchy, which again had nothing to do with contemporary feminist usage. And out of nowhere, you have this ocean of different definitions and interpretations. And in 2 papers, you will even find essentially 2 completely differing interpretations of what patriarchy even is. It was very hard for me to even get a sort of foot into it.
Yeah, I feel like the way it gets used mostly you'll hear of, it's kind of like a system which prioritizes male success over female success, or generally but like even that's too simplistic. It's like, I don't know, that's kind of like a vague idea of what it means, but it doesn't really seem to have a very set in stone meaning. So I kind of don't use the word just because I feel like I like being clear about my language, about what I'm saying, because especially on YouTube, like in feminist circles, you can say stuff like patriarchy and just as throwaway terms and no one's going to bat an eyelid. But you know, once you get outside these circles, you know, people go, but if patriarchy exists, how come there are women richer than me? Checkmate, feminist. And you kind of end up going, like, maybe it's better if I just don't say the trigger words for the anti-feminists. Like,
well, I've always thought it was a bit silly, like with the woman in the court sort of thing we were touching upon earlier on. Like how we call it the patriarchy and we say this is a system that affects everybody and whatnot, but we name it a thing that says it favours men and it's better for men, it makes things good for men, but like we were talking about earlier, it fucks over men in some regards, and feminists have said that, so why call it the patriarchy?
I think it's because of the net effects, like, and I guess it depends which you see as more, like, as better or worse than the other. Perhaps it's just that like it's more of a value judgment at that point, because while, you know, and it's also a historical term, I feel like, you know, when you're talking about feminism, it has got a history, and I guess people go, oh, but why call it feminism? And it's not quite the same as your argument here, but it's because of the history. You know, you can't just throw away your history because, you know, you want it to be more equal or whatever. Like, and also like equalism and, you know, egalitarianism. Do you see anyone rallying behind these terms? Not really. Anyway, that was a side tangent. Sorry. Back to the topic. Patriarchy. I guess it's the net disadvantage to women versus the net advantage to men that leads to it being called that. It's like on individual basis, though, you can see that there is a negative fallout to having sexist attitudes that women are going to be good at X, Y, and Z, because the inverse is men are bad at X, Y, and Z. So, you know, like at least in my country, men aren't expected to have much to do with their kids because it's gay and womanly to want anything to do with your children, which is obviously not true. But that sort of pervasive attitude, I feel like, is just the result of having this attitude towards women. It's kind of a yin and yang situation where, you know, for every stereotype there is about women, there's going to be the inverse about men, and overall the stereotypes are more likely to benefit men than women. If that makes sense.
Oh yeah, it does. It does. I can follow you.
Yeah. Also, I've seen in the chat a lot. I wanted to mention this. They commented on the fact that I say I feel like. Honestly, it's because I just don't like sounding too strong on things, because I feel like I don't mean this in a mean way, but anti-SJWs can be kind of sensitive, and when I'm speaking with somebody on the internet live, I kind of end up making my opinion sound a little soft because I want to be gentle about it, because people tend to get a bit, you know, funny at you.
That you want
saying you hate all men?
Yeah.
Yes.
Well.
Yes, I am.
So you're saying the system helps men, even though we just demonstrated that it doesn't.
Please be gentle. It's my first time talking to a feminist.
Libtards.
Yeah, but I would actually say that I, to a certain degree, share this sentiment. Dealing with certain issues, namely with certain people, can be extremely infuriating to some subsections of my quote-unquote my niche of the internet. So I totally understand being a bit reserved about things, because very often it's really not the content that's so sort of infuriating to them or touchy to them, but very often it's the way it's presented. So, for example, when I said that the PJW is a bit of a not so smart and educated person, that results in quite the shitstorm. But yeah, I get what you're coming from. There are two more super chats I would like to read, and then we would get into the second segment of this. The first one is by November Mind. Good morning, Potato Stan. So yeah, good morning, Ireland. That's a lovely statement. And the next one is actually really interesting to me. by Red6UA. What do you think about pro-life feminism? Can femmes be?
I don't really think I respect pro-life feminism as feminism, but I guess it depends who you ask, because really that's more value judgment as far as do you value this as a feminist idea. But I don't think it's a feminist idea purely because you can't really stop abortion. As in, like, even if it's illegal, people will find a way. If they don't want to be pregnant, they will find a way to get rid of the pregnancy, if you know what I'm saying. And often that leads to death for the women who do this. So all banning abortion does is kill women because they're going to try to do it in some other way. And it's probably better to have a way to do it where it's, going to cause the least harm to everyone. Because I mean, the people who get all bent out of shape about abortion, it's like, oh yeah, well, how many memories do you have from when you were a fetus? Like it's just like it's not really a full person yet. Like I don't get this sort of sensitivity. Like I don't know. I'm not very maternal though. I have no maternal bones in my body, so maybe that's the problem here.
I don't have a lot of memories for the past few days, to be honest.
Oh yeah.
It's just like junkies, it's not even a real person yet. It's like I don't know. I really don't get along with people who are super maternal in this way, and I tend to have to shut up because people who've got kids really hate how I speak about fetuses and stuff, and like it's bad also.
I can't imagine why.
Yeah, I used to call them just a collection of cells, and I remember this woman got really upset with me because she'd had a miscarriage, and I felt like a real asshole at that point. But yeah, unfortunately that's just how I see it, as just a collection of cells. I see it as no different to individual sperm or an egg. So I think if I were to be pro-life, I'd have to be anti-jacking off, and because that's alive, that's human material that's alive.
Even when they come out, like fucking, they're still pretty fucking brain dead to begin with. They just sit and wiggle. And they're adorable. They're fucking great babies.
12-month in abortions.
Honest to God, if you cannot appreciate the divine beauty of a wee baby's frog legs, then fucking you have no soul. Baby frog legs are just the best things in the world. Yeah, they're great, but they're brilliant. Legs. They have wee wiggly frog legs, and they just kick about the place, and they're like, aha, I'm doing something. And it's like, no, you're not. You're a fucking idiot. But I love you, you wee shit.
Also, I just wanted to clarify that I was kidding about 12-month abortions, because I feel like someone's going to take that seriously. I feel like someone's going to take me seriously on that, and then I'm going to get fucking 10 response videos from the bargain basement anti-SJW channels. Like, my lord, they fucking, oh god, the cringe.
Oh god.
Oh
god, but
I've got every kid with a fucking camera or a microphone. Oh my god.
Come again?
Every kid with a microphone has an anti-SJW channel. Like I get response videos from kids. Like, oh.
Well, fucking. I think I've been fairly courteous here, Claudia. There's no need to get personal. Fuck it. Fuck off.
Oh man.
Also, guys, check out my Fortnite playthrough.
my radical Roblox speedrun.
Oh my god.
Also, if God hadn't intended us to have abortions, he wouldn't have invented stairs.
That is a good argument. I really appreciate you being here, Naka, because you are a very upfront person about things.
Wow, man, so, that gap, you could hear my self-worth just die.
You can't understand it. But no, okay, so I would say I'm actually through with the first segment, and I would get to something that's super interesting to me, both as a content creator. I assume that it's going to be super interesting to my audience as well. What is it like to be a feminist and I assume a lefty tuber on YouTube? What's it like?
Well, it's kind of a mixed bag. You get a lot of different reactions. It's kind of interesting. Like, I guess the problem is you can't really have a sense of humor and be a feminist, and not because of my side. You think it's because of my side when I say that, but no, it's the anti-SJWs. They take me seriously everything I say, and I can't be ironic or joke about things anymore. Like, in my personal life, I could make jokes with friends like, oh yeah, you know, put men in cages or whatever, and it's a joke, and everyone understands that I'm kidding. But online, people take that and go, "Oh my god, feminazi!" and they like freak out at you, and you go, "Whoa, it's a joke," and you can't be ironic or have a joke. And it's like people treat things like, "Okay, this is a documentary on your life. This is like totally serious." Response videos to joke videos I made, like. I made a joke video becoming an anti-SJW, and an anti-SJW responded to it, debunking my points in it, which and it
Oh no!
it was a 2-minute joke video where I was just taking the piss out of anti-SJWs by saying like, "Oh, hey guys, I just became an anti-SJW because someone called me fat and ugly on the internet, and you know, now I've changed all my opinions so that people don't think I'm fat and ugly." Um, and it was all a bit of a joke because I was taking the piss out of the commenters who were just like being like, "Fat ugly feminist wrecked," and you know, it was a way to be like, you know, this isn't going to change any minds, you're being idiots. But then this person responded to it like I was being totally serious and like engaged with everything that I said as if it was serious, and it was really weird to watch because it takes the fun out of um it takes the fun out of making content when you can't make any jokes without getting these response videos doing lengthy, you know, engaging with your joke as if it's serious. And, you know, then their fan base takes it as if I was being sincere, like completely. And it's just, and then I end up flooded with thousands of idiots who don't get jokes. And it's just like, oh, it's painful.
So,
Like, oh.
regarding this joke thingy, and I'm sorry I'm putting you a bit in the spot of talking for the entirety of all feminists there ever have been and will be, but I often find that certain jokes seem to be extremely off the table for many feminists and for many lefty tubers in general. So, for example, making a racist joke, making a sexist joke, or even making, frankly speaking, a severely offensive joke, for example, about a school shooter or something like that. And it suddenly becomes a very, very big issue to them. While at the same time, I, through the little interaction that I had with many people on the lefty tube, they engage in very similar humor. Would you say there is a bit of a cognitive dissonance, or is there something that justifies this?
What would you say would be like the kind of jokes that Lefty Tube is telling? Because I'm not really sure I've seen anything that would be like racist or something, but like joking about the shooter, I think there's mixed opinions there. I think that's really the problem is that like, I think if it's the same people complaining, because like I saw a conversation happening on Twitter earlier actually, because Sean had made a joke about the shooter at YouTube, and Curiosity wasn't a fan, but Rational Disconnect said, "Oh well, look, I've done the same thing. I can see the humor here." But you know, I guess it's the issue is that, you know, yes, things sometimes are offensive, but it's really where you draw the line, and some people draw the line differently to others. It's also what we bring to the table as far as our biases. Like, you know, I guess I kind of have a bit of a different background to some feminists on YouTube. Like, I kind of was an edgy teenager, and you know, part of that never really died or went away because I'll still laugh at problematic jokes and stuff. And
So, to
yeah,
give you a specific example, um, if, for example, I went to Twitter right now and in a joking manner said basically kill all black people, for example, or
mm,
uh, put all women in cages or something like that, that would probably be taken seriously, even though it is very clearly a joke.
I think it
While I've
depends how you go about it though, because I guess if you're just laughing and completely with no other context, that is kind of strange. But like if you're like, oh yeah, of course, being a skeptic, a true skeptic, I believe this and that, and you're joking, I feel like that's different. Like, I wouldn't be offended by
Mhm.
that if you were like, oh yes, being a YouTube skeptic, I believe that all women should be subjugated or whatever, and like I feel like that's where it's an obvious joke.
Well,
Mhm.
if I saw you post that, I would have grabbed my hammer, and I would be ready for you. You know, like I'd be ready to fight for the glory. You know, of the skeptic ethno state. We got to do it.
Oh, that's good.
We're gonna
Well,
kill.
yeah.
We're gonna solve it all skeptically. We're gonna kill the blacks, the whites, the yellows, the browns, all of them, the full spectrum. We're gonna kill them all, and then there'll only be skeptics left.
Jesus.
Everyone's obsessing over the word problematic. I don't know. I don't even. What did I say that's got people?
I actually haven't even heard you say something not something. I didn't even hear you use the term problematic.
Yeah, I don't know,
So,
because the chat's
I
like
don't know.
problematic jokes. Christ on a stick.
Ah,
And like,
right.
it's like, whoa,
probably
okay. Sorry,
it's
guys.
probably referring
Is
to
that another
it's probably
trigger
referring
word?
it's probably referring to the sort of general attitude of what you will find in many sort of I don't even know how to call them, but like say BuzzFeed, Kotaku, something in that
Yeah.
direction. You will often find people being extremely antsy about essentially very harmless. Um, I remember there was this one joke in a crowdfunded game that it basically boils down to this guy on a tombstone. There was this poem that a guy fell in love with a girl, and then he found out that the girl had between her legs than he did, so he jumped off a cliff. And that's, I think that yes, it can be interpreted as being harmful towards trans people, but at the same time, it's in a game on a tombstone, and I think that the humor of it kind of overplays any sort of negativity of it, and yet you will have sites like BuzzFeed or Kotaku that will just go ham on something like this and paint it as one of the worst things that has ever happened to trans people ever. So that's, I
Yeah, like
think,
I think there's some overreaction, but I can see how that joke would be offensive though, because like there are like cases in America murders of trans women because like a dude will find out her and then just kill her or beat the shit out of her. And that's where I think there is some sort of sensitivity around this that I think is kind of justified when it comes to those sort of issues. Because when you're talking about people who are literally getting murdered because of people realizing that they're trans, I can understand why they don't really want to hear jokes about it. Like maybe in a post, like when this isn't a problem anymore, maybe we can joke about it. But the problem is that most of these guys aren't just killing themselves; they're killing the woman.
oh,
When they
absolutely,
realize
absolutely.
she's got a little bit extra that they weren't expecting. And that's where I think it's a bit of a problem, because it's kind of making light of something that is actually really hurting people today. So it depends on the thing. Like I think it depends, because there would be probably feminists who found that hilarious. But I can understand why people weren't really happy about that.
I mean, in the specific context of this joke, I think the humor is not really in the fact that a trans. I mean, the humor is really not centered, in my opinion, around this trans person, but around a person that was so desperate about finding out that someone that he was attracted to also I don't have the
Yeah,
proper
I understand.
empirical
It's like
terminology, but it's
it's
like
such
he
an
killed himself over
overreaction.
fucking nothing. Yeah, absolutely. And I think
Like
that's
I
where the
get
humor's
that
coming from.
humor. Like I understand that like that's such a dramatic reaction to have. But I guess the problem is it's not actually far from the truth of the situation. Like there are so many dudes who find trans women attractive and then get really fucking aggressive because of it, and get really. It's because it's a combination of things, like the insecurity around it, and then there's also the lashing out at trans women about it. So again, I feel like this would be okay if it was like a post, this problem of people killing trans people society. But with that going on, I can understand how people take it the wrong way. But I can also see the humor, because like it's such a dramatic overreaction to have because you found a trans woman attractive. So I don't know. I guess it also depends how you get the humor from that, because there would be people who would laugh at that and go, ha ha ha, he was attracted to a trans woman. And, you know, they'd empathize more with it in that way. Whereas, you know, you or I would laugh at that as in, what a fucking drama queen. And it really depends how you're engaging with the joke as well. So I don't know. I guess it depends how you interpret it.
So, now that you have said that you can, to a certain degree, understand why it may be upsetting and or offensive, is that something that you would say, you know, oh man, I'm potentially not a big fan of it, but what can you do? Or would you say that we should have a sort of active effort to get rid of such content?
I wouldn't want to get rid of it as in, like, I wouldn't want to censor somebody's jokes because I don't like them. I think engaging in criticism of it is fine. I guess I'd draw the line at going, hey guys, look, this is actually a serious problem, and then maybe talking to them about it and having a conversation rather than like, hey, let's censor this or do something from the top down. Like I'd be more in favor of something else, like yeah, like just talking about it. Like, for example, with you know, the Count Dankula current, I don't think he should be punished under law for the joke. I think I personally found it funny. I can understand though how some people might be offended by it. It is a sensitive subject, but I personally think the better approach would be to come to him and say, hey, look, this is why I find your joke offensive, and to talk about it rather than to go straight for the, you know, for something legal. Yeah, I don't know. I don't agree with suing him over it or having him put in jail or whatever. I think it's horrific, really. Because honestly, I think this just sort of furthers the narrative of against Jews anyway. Because, like, you know, like I feel like this is just going to be something that the alt-right can point to for, you know, ages now, because they can go, hey, look, see, Jews do have a lot of power.
No.
You know, and it's just helping the alt-right, if anything, because it's just sort of going to be their case they point to every time something comes up.
What I'm taking from this is that that a sort of push for censorship is definitely not what you'd suggest, but
No.
you would say that criticism is definitely a fine thing, and talking to people about it is fine, right?
Yeah, I think people overreact to criticism a lot. Like, people who are criticizing Cuphead for the racist sort of implications of using that old-timey style art. I don't see anything. Oh, well, Cuphead kind of had a lot of references to racist old cartoons that were like, you know, like the whole dice thing, that apparently that's a sort of stereotype in America associated with black people, that like they gamble too much or something is the stereotype. And, you know, that it was used a lot in these old-timey racist cartoons. Sean did a video on it, actually, that was really interesting, but...
I'm very sorry. I'm very, very sorry. I get Cuphead very early when it came out, and that dice bit, the bit with the dice, so you're saying that was seen as like a kind of black thing?
Well, yeah, in the past, you watch what Cuphead partly was based on, one of the influences, and it was actually this really racist cartoon. Not sure what it was based on, but it had basically the same plot.
Is it because that dice part of the game didn't work?
Yeah, well, basically what they did is they basically whitewashed the story, as in, like, they sort of redid it, but without the racism. Like, basically the guess I'd have, and what Sean said in his video about it, was that, you know, they probably just sat down and went, damn, this cartoon's really cool, but we don't like the racism. Let's do something with this idea, but not have the racism. So yeah, like, because I didn't know about it, but yeah, I ended up reading up on it a bit after that and seeing a few old shows or cartoons, and there'd be things like with dudes with dice on their underpants who are black, and it's this old stereotype that they're gamblers and bad with money, and it's actually really quite awful, and I had no idea. But because it was based on something that was racist, there was sort of a debate about, is it okay to kind of portray our past as if racism wasn't a problem, or like, because it's kind of like it sort of helps along this idea of the old-timey kind of cartoons as being this great thing, but in reality there was quite a lot of really bad aspects to it.
No,
If that makes sense. I
yeah,
don't know.
yeah, but everybody just fucking sweeps the old, like, you know, look at the darkies with the big lips and whatnot, cartoons under the rug. You know, the Cuphead was about all the good stuff. Like, honest to God, if there was there really anything that objectively racist in the game? That you could look at it and go,
Yeah.
oh, racist, or is that just people banning a fine?
I don't think anyone was saying Cuphead was racist. It's more that it was based on something racist, and you know, it's not that you play Cuphead and you become a racist. I'm not trying to say that. It's more that it was based on a racist cartoon, in part at least, and there was at least just a discussion about what that means, or is it okay to sort of you know, repaint this issue as if it's not a problem, or I don't know, like it was more like it wasn't really what it was being made out to be, because people were making it sound like people were going, oh my god, Cuphead's racist, ban it now, ban it now. But it was more like, hey, this kind of has some history associated with it that's not so great, and it's kind of weird to, you know, whitewash history like this. Like,
oh, sorry, I'm sorry to interrupt. By the way, you're lovely to have on, and there's a point I've been wanting to get of how I knew you were one of the good uns. By the way, of how I know you to begin with.
Naka, how much did you drink so far?
Not much. Maybe.
Okay, proceed.
Okay.
Proceed.
So, no, but the thing with Cuphead is what happened is there was no real racist imagery in the game. And they're like, but there was racist cartoons of that style in the past. And somebody made that video because it was popular. Because Cuphead was popular. And all the people that came out and called them on their bullshit, as they should have, called them on the bullshit because, again, Cuphead was popular. Cuphead was all over the place. That was the point of it. That's probably why they did it. If they genuinely believed that that sort of stuff, that racism was fucking prevalent or whatever, or like we shouldn't hold up the good aspects of something in the past because there was some racism in the past, that's dumb. I can't agree with that.
So just so it doesn't come across as if we are 2v1 dogpiling Claudia, I would actually like to counter your point, Nuckelavee, because would you say that Ip Man, you've seen the movie, right?
Ip Man? Yeah, I've seen all three.
Would you say that the first one has racist undertones, or that it even is overtly racist?
Yeah, probably, and it just, well, I wouldn't really know because I live in a nice white place where I only get told who hates who currently by the media. You know, well, I don't know about back then, but I imagine race was involved because it's like basically my country can beat up your country, and that's what old school racism was.
To a certain degree, but if we then go into Ip Man, so to the Western audience, it some people will see it as having a certain element of racism to it. Yeah, it's definitely. But the vast majority of people will just see it as a fancy fighting movie. But once you get into a little bit of Chinese culture, into Chinese portrayal of the Japanese, you start realizing that the entire movie is literally a hate poem towards the Japanese. And that when you think about it, there is not a single decent or good, quote unquote, good Japanese character in the entire movie. You have a literal caricature. Like if you look into both Japanese and US American anti-Japanese propaganda, is literally taken out of a propaganda poster, like this smug grin with those massive teeth and this cap on his head. And everyone that collaborates with the Nazis is portrayed as weak. Violence against Japanese is always good. And it is done in this very sort of distinct context of Chinese nationalism, because of course they were at war with the Japanese. And I'm going to use this really weird term, which basically means decoding racism, to have this sort of cultural capacity to understand it. So I think that, yeah, absolutely, you can have racism or any sort of other message, really. It doesn't have to be even a negative message. It can be a positive message, but only through really understanding the sort of cultural background of it, you'll be able to really grasp what's actually happening on screen.
Yeah, no, but I just don't see it. Like, honestly, I never thought about race at all during like, the first It Man and whatnot. What I thought about is, you know what? I've got a drink in me. I'm gonna watch this, and I'm gonna watch Bruce Lee's dad kick the shit out of some people, and it's gonna be great.
Yeah. Well,
Can I
absolutely,
just interject quickly to say that it's totally fine to do that, to just watch it and enjoy it as it is. And Cuphead, like, I think people should just play it as it is and really like it, you know, have a good time. But I guess it's more like these are just critical theory kind of things or deeper questions that not everyone has to think about it, of course. But I feel like, you know, it's not really what it's being made out to be is more what I'm getting at here. Like, it's fine not to want to think about that kind of aspect of a piece of media if you just want to, you know, enjoy it as it is and not really think too deeply on it. But I guess like it's more like asking the question: is it okay to whitewash some things in history, or should it be? You know, rather than actually just, it's not really making a statement either way. I don't think, like a lot of the things that were out there about this. And I guess I don't like that some people on this anti-SJW side seem to just want to shut down conversations because they don't like thinking about it, when it's like, if you don't like thinking about it, that's fine, but don't shut down the conversation just because you don't want to hear it.
No, that's not my position at all.
No, not you, just some people, broadly speaking, quote unquote, on your side, seem to want to just shut down these conversations because you don't agree, and it's like,
Hey, could
I
you
don't
do me
know.
a big favor? Could you lean in real close to the microphone and say skeptic community?
Like Lebo, like fucking. I know it's not his dad. Like I said, I've seen all three films. I know what It Man is about. The joke was that when you're hammered, it's like, hey, I'm gonna watch Bruce Lee's dad. Not fuck it. It's tons of people because he's getting having no food and everything's shit. That's it. It's just, oh, by the way, things are bad. But by the way, kung fu, like you're just gonna set about some cunts. That's gonna be good.
Right, let's try to move away from those two sort of very specific examples, Ip Man and Cuphead, if that's okay with you two, towards other things. One of the things that's super interesting to me, and that is for some reason very sort of delicate when we're talking about it, is I'm going to start this way. My sort of side in the talk with Muke, I was using the term "my commune" because, well, it's funny to use the term. So my sort of side, I think, operates very differently from your side. By now, it's not really the case anymore. But even like a year ago, everyone was largely on friendly terms. Sure, there were certain disputes, absolutely, as there is everywhere. But it was a very sort of friendly, most people knew each other, there was a lot of collaboration, and they seemed to thrive with this sort of common enemy. There was a lot of backroom dealing as well, many Discord servers, many many Skype groups, many Twitter groups, and there was a sort of us against them mentality very strong. And I can say as a content creator, I was invited to a lot of things that I didn't really like. What is it like, the sort of structure behind the scenes in your side of YouTube? If you're comfortable talking about that is.
I think mostly it's just either talking about content that they want to make, or same sort of thing, but not quite as us versus them. I think, well, actually, there is a lot of bitching about anti-SJWs that happens, but it's kind of just venting as far as what I can see. I think a lot of the time it's just like if they're frustrated with an anti-SJW about saying, they'll just go into the group chat and be like, oh, for fuck's sake, this person. And I've done it too, because like I was arguing with somebody because he was saying to me that Jordan Peterson wasn't a conservative, he's a classical liberal, and to call him a conservative is super unfair and misrepresenting him. And I was like genuinely meme quote unquote triggered about that, because I was like, are you fucking serious? Like, he identifies as a conservative, you know, he agrees with the conservatives on everything. Why is it an insult to call him a conservative? Like, I dislike that. I'll say that as like a matter of fact of this is what he espouses and this is what he identifies as, and yet people take it like I'm trying to be insulting, and it's like, no, conservative is just a political position that he happens to have. But anyway, sorry, I went on a totally random side rant. I'm gonna stop doing that. But yeah, like
you're on a stream where I am here. You may talk about whatever you wish. Layman has no power here. If Layman brought you on here, I naturally assume you know more about. You've read more things than me. I probably don't agree with them, or I might agree with them. I don't know. But you may speak as much as you please. We're
I went on a totally random side rant. But yeah, that guy irritated me, so I ended up venting about it in a group chat. And I feel like that happens a lot, where people will be arguing with somebody and be like, "Oh my god, this person's so stupid," and they'll get like really frustrated. But it's a way to sort of vent that without it being like public, or without like, so that I'm not just going to be like, piss off, you cunt, at everyone who disagrees with me, because I get some of that frustration out by talking to other people who agree with me there. I think it helps to keep that sort of, so that I don't lose my temper at somebody or something.
So there seems to be this really weird thing. I think with one of these sort of very crucial differences between, and I'm really sorry for using the term "your side" and "my side," but I think it's the easiest
really
way it's that many people on your side are extremely reluctant to the point of hostility when it comes to engaging with people. So I'm of course not going to name any names here, but I've had some rather negative experiences, even though approaching them as a very honest actor, just trying to, hey, give me your side of things, can you recommend some literature, and you'll be faced with rejection. On the other hand, the debate meme is kind of based on reality, on quote unquote my side of things. When you want to talk to someone, most people are very happy about engaging with you both online and both in private. Have you seen that as well? Do you know
yeah, I agree. I think there is definitely a problem on my side of this educate yourself shitlord sort of attitude. I think it's shutting the door on people that you really shouldn't. I very much so agree with something that Sean said in one of his videos. And I know it seems like I'm a massive Sean fangirl. It's just he had a very great quote here. He said that, you know, when was the last time you heard an alt-writer say, educate yourself, shitlord? You know, like, so the problem is like our side keeps doing this, educate yourself and shutting the door on people, but who's going to be picking these people up if we're not going to engage with them, if we're not going to embrace people or try to get our ideas out there? I feel like there is a certain section of social justice that seems to be just a bit of a circle jerk, where people are just there to sort of virtue signal about being good activists, but they're actually not interested at all in changing minds. And I think that's a huge problem, because if you don't want to change anyone's mind on anything ever, you know, then are you really doing activism? Because if no one ends up agreeing with you because no one's ever been convinced, you know, of your ideas, and if you're shutting the door on everyone, then are you really, like, what are you doing? Like, I don't know. I feel like we need to do more changing people's minds. And I also want to clarify here, I don't mean that you should engage seriously with everyone. There are people who are just taking the piss out of you and have no interest in what you've actually got to say. But yeah, like, because there are anti-SJWs who use that sort of, oh, you never engage with the other side, your side never does, just to try and, you know, take the piss, because they'll be like, you know, just totally straw manning and just saying really dumb shit. Like, recently there was a guy who said that because I said that not all Trump supporters are Nazis, that I meant by that most Trump supporters are Nazis. And I had no idea how he got that idea from it, but he was saying that not all means most. And it's just like, it's things like that where I just mute somebody or block them, because I'm like, what the fuck are you even talking about? You're not even listening to me.
Wait a minute. No, but that. So what you said? Hashtag not all Nazis in regard to like Trump supporters.
Oh no, I said not all Trump supporters are Nazis.
Oh, right, okay.
Because it was like in conversation talking about Antifa and where my issues with are, is that sometimes I've seen them attacking just generic Trump supporters, and I think there's a problem there because not all Trump supporters are Nazis. Like, if you're punching just Nazis, to be honest, it's hard for me to give a fuck about the Nazis, because if you're arguing for genocide of people, I'm sorry, but I just don't care much if you get punched for saying that. Like, I don't know, maybe I'm being harsh. It just...
Yeah,
it's not saying I'd celebrate,
Guys,
but
let's not shoot our Antifa load quite yet.
I'm
Let's
not.
keep the
I'm
Antifa
not
for a
gonna
bit
go for.
later.
I'm not gonna go for Antifa. That wasn't what I was gonna go for.
Right. Okay.
But when I
okay,
see,
so that was the context.
but
oh, sorry. Go on.
And I get what you're saying. Like, if people are like, you know, like let's kill everybody and have the white ethno state and whatnot. Yeah, people like that should be punched in the face. Not for saying it though. Probably, if they try and actually do it, then yeah, they should be shot and killed when they try violent revolution. But
I mean,
but
I feel like violence for things people say is kind of expected in other circumstances, though. Like, if I went up to a guy, a big buff dude, and if I went up to his girlfriend in front of him and said, yeah, I want to fucking grab your titties, bitch, do you reckon he's, like, if I were a dude, do you reckon he would hit me? Probably, you know, like, and you could kind of understand that, right? Like, if a dude comes up to another dude who's jacked and goes up to his girlfriend and hits on her in a really disgusting way, deliberately to get at him, could you understand that dude getting punched in the face? Like, I understand, and I feel like that's kind of like neo-Nazis. If you're going around talking shit and saying this gross shit, I can understand why someone will to punch you in the face for that. I don't think it's justified necessarily, but I understand it.
actually, anecdotal, and it's purely from every instance of that I actually know where it's happened when somebody's been out with their girlfriend. Only once that I've heard of has it led to violence, and this is Glasgow, by the way, where the ultimate way to pick a fight with a man is saying, "Are you looking at my bird?" And if you say yes, then they'll punch you, and if you say no, they will say, "Are you trying to say she's ugly?" And then they will punch you. That's how you get in a fight. But in all instances I've seen that. All the other times they've just been like, "Oh no, it's just fucking disgusting," and we either just ask them to bugger off or leave, or they would just leave the area.
I think violence isn't ideal. It's more like if you go around, like, maybe I'm victim blaming here. It's just I feel like if certain things you're doing them, you're more likely to get punched in the face than if you're not doing that thing. Like, if you're going around saying things deliberately to antagonize people, I think it's not good for you.
Yes,
like...
yes, but and again, by the way, the only time that I've ever heard with this stuff, and I've heard many stories about this sort of thing, where I come from, again, all anecdotal, but was when they were leaving and the drunk guy came out and started getting physically violent, you know, the shoving thing. To me personally, I don't think it should come to blows until the shoving party or actual violence comes into play. I don't believe in throwing a punch for something somebody has said.
It's not quite that I'd say it's justified. It's like, what the fuck were you thinking going around, you know, picking fights with people? Because, you know, I don't know. I feel like if you're going around saying Nazi shit, especially with what has happened, like if you're looking at the neo-Nazis and being like at the Nazis and going, yep, that was great, I want more of that, please. Like, that's where I feel like you're kind of like, you're in an indefensible position and someone's going to get pissed off enough at you once.
But on the other side of the coin,
like if you're going around saying shit that offensive,
how is it justified when black supremacists and such like that in America do that sort of thing? And we do know that they do that sort of thing. We've seen it happen. Do you believe?
I mean, to be honest, I wouldn't really be surprised if they did get beaten up for saying shit like that. Like, if a black person walked up to a bunch of white people and said, "I hate all of you, fuck you, whiteys," and, you know, did shit like that, that's borderline suicidal. Like, what the fuck are you doing? Like, I think that person is asking for trouble. It's not that I think it's justified to hit them, but I mean,
right,
what
so
would you expect?
So in your case, it's really not a moral value judgment whether it's okay or not, but it's like, well, you did essentially recklessly endanger yourself. What did you expect?
Yes, like, because that's the thing, is I feel like if you want to face fucking do Sieg Heils and shit. You've got to, like, if you want to be on the covers of things doing that, you're kind of putting yourself at risk needlessly. And it's weird, like, when they play the victim afterwards, because it's like, well, what did you expect? Like, when you were going around doing neo-Nazi salutes and shit, like, did you think no one was going to have an issue with that? Like, again, victim blaming, I know, but I mean, yeah.
The worst part of this, of course, is the escalation. Like, probably the worst example we saw of this was, of course, well, in recent years, was the Unite the Right rally. You know, where with Queen Spencer and his fucking tiki torches. That dickhead. But, and then you see the footage of, like, the car and stuff like that, and they start wailing on it with the bats and shit. And then he plows into the crowd or whatever. Don't know his motivations. All I know is it was fucking horrible that shit went down. But that's what happens with that sort of thing. Escalation. You know, it just escalates to that point where it just fucking horrendous, violent shit. And we see this more and more all over the place. It's fucking, it's ridiculous.
So
I just kind of dislike this narrative that it's Antifa starting the violence, when it's like, do you really think neo-Nazis need an excuse to start violence? Like, do you really think that neo-Nazis are these pacifists who are just trying to have their opinions? And, you know, like, I really hate this idea of like, oh, neo-Nazis are only going to become violent because of Antifa. There's nothing violent about them aside from that. Like, I don't know. Just
you know what? Let's go. Let's do this. We've already started jerking off, so let's go for the whole Antifa. let's do it. I'm gonna obviously start with sort of the big question in the room, which is, would you say that, or rather, now I think we have a very, very sort of common understanding of things. Would you say that Antifa is at the moment in the United States both necessary and productive in their conduct?
I wouldn't want to put those words onto it, to be honest. Like, so I'm not really fully in support, but I'm not fully against. It's just kind of, I have mixed feelings. Because, like, as long as they're just punching Nazis, I don't really give a shit. But when I see them do shit to Trump supporters, I think that's taking it too far and that's overstepping. Like, because if they see all Trump supporters as neo-Nazis, then that's just flat out wrong and bad, and I don't agree. But to be honest, when they're punching neo-Nazis who are chanting in the streets, Jews will not replace us and blood and soil, it's hard for me to give a shit about those people chanting those things. Because, you know, if you're going to go out in public and scream offensive things, you know, you're putting yourself in danger. You know, you better be ready to put your dukes up, I reckon, if you're going to go around screaming offensive shit in the streets, you know? And the Antifa people are going, yep, I accept your challenge, you know, and just following through on things, I feel like, because, you know, it's not that I think it's justified, but what the fuck are you doing screaming that in the streets?
And then a car plows through a crowd.
Yeah, but I don't think that's connected really, because I think that's more because of the police failings, because they had no one around that area when they previously was meant to. But there's been, you know, there's also... But, like, do you think that guy was a perfectly stable person where Antifa caused that? Like,
no,
this person is an unstable fuckwit.
I don't know that dude's circumstances, but I would never plow a fucking... Like, even if I was just like, oh, well, I better park the car because I'm here to pick up mother. What's the deal with the tiki torches? Oh, and friggin'... And then they just start wailing on my car. Like... No fucking circumstance is it acceptable for you to plow that fucking car in. Even if I was like, oh, by the way, Hitler was pretty good, you know, like fucking no, you know, fucking Jesus.
Yeah, I mean,
Jesus is.
I don't know. I feel like it's more like if you're going around saying inflammatory shit and then you act surprised when you get punched in the face. Like, I don't know. It feels like the ultimate, you know, it's like somebody tripping themselves over and then complaining because they tripped. Like, I don't know. It's just, to me, I have a lot of trouble sympathizing with the people who are actively being fascists who get punched, because it's like...
Oh, definitely. Definitely.
Like, I don't know, like, the genuine people who are actually saying shit like Jews will not replace us, if you get punched in the face for screaming that in the streets, I just kind of go, well, that's a consequence of your actions. Like... the fuck are you doing?
If I recall, I went back and watched that footage, and it wasn't Jews will not replace us. It was you will not replace us, and it was
it was Jews.
Was it? By the way,
Jews.
if I'm wrong,
yeah.
If I'm wrong, but it might have been a different chant I was looking at. But if I'm
it
wrong,
depends. There's multiple chants they do,
wrong,
but
then
I'm sure one of them might
hold
have been "You will not replace us." But even then, what are they talking about? Like, you know, it still has that connotation there.
well, they're ranting about the fucking
But
white
it was
identity.
Jews, so they definitely chant that.
Right. Hey, and Naka, I sent you a thingy. Claudia, so what I'm getting at is that from your perspective, that if there is any sort of violence happening towards someone that is very clearly being a sort of very sort of aggressive, potentially hostile, uh, you may even make the argument that the ideology itself is inherently hostile and potentially dangerous. Neo-Nazi, for example, that now let's turn this around real quick.
It's more like I don't really care. It's not really even. It's not support or you know,
I did not imply that.
disavowal. It's more like a total fence sitter position where it's like, I can see why somebody would want to punch you in the face if you're acting like that. Like, it's just, I don't know, if you see neo-Nazis screaming a bunch of shit, I can see why someone would want to punch you in the face, and why somebody maybe someone who just doesn't have great control over their anger, you know, if they decide to hit you in the face, I feel like you're taking that risk if you're going to go out there saying things people find offensive, and they do know people find this kind of thing offensive. So I feel like if you're going to go say those things, you expect that some people are going to want to hit you,
so
and you've got to be prepared for that.
So let's create this sort of hypothetical scenario. Let's say that I'm from Belarus, Ukraine, any country of the former Eastern Bloc, and let's say that I see people marching around with a Soviet flag, chanting for the downfall of my current local country of residence, asking for maybe even a violent redistribution of wealth. Would you not care if I went up to them and punched them?
Well, again, it's like, I guess if it's you, I'd be like, maybe you shouldn't do that. That's not a good idea. But again, like, I think if you're going to go out screaming things like that in the street and, you know, deliberately antagonizing people or saying things that are blatantly offensive to the population, then what do you really expect to happen? Like, if I went into the street and started saying something really horrible, like, you know, if I started saying something horribly racist, or if I just said something like, you know, we should be able to rape women or whatever, I wouldn't be surprised. Like, it, you know, if I'm going around screaming offensive shit, then I think no matter what side you're on, no matter what you're doing, if you're going into the streets yelling offensive shit and, you know, deliberately upsetting people, you've kind of got to expect that not everyone's all there, and some people don't have control over their anger. So if you're going to do that, you've got to be prepared for the consequences. Like, you know, there's blatantly stupid behavior that where you're bringing harm on yourself, and I feel like if, like, being someone who goes into the street and, you know, screams about the Jews and shit, like, they're putting themselves at risk, and they need to be prepared for that. Like, if you want to be a neo-Nazi, fine, go into the streets, but you need to be prepared that some people are going to want to hurt you. So you don't victim and cry foul when people take you up on your violent ideology. And it's the same for any violent ideology. If you want, you know, if you want violence, don't go complaining when you get it.
So would you say that, for example, to give a really specific example, the whole Sargon situation where his speech thingy, whatever, was interrupted by Antifa, would you say that that would you say that Sargon is a justifiable target for Antifa?
No, not at all. I think that was stupid, really stupid. I think it was hard to tell who started the violence because I've heard mixed stories there, and from the video it's really hard to tell because I feel like Antifa started getting punched before they had punched anyone else. But that said, like, it's I wouldn't really be confident saying that because
to
I
be
don't
fair,
know who started the violence.
from a sort of personal standpoint speaking, Imagine you are sitting there, listening
Yeah.
to some dude talking about feminism, and out of nowhere, like 5, 6, 7, and maybe like 10 dudes in face masks, completely dressed in black, storm the
Mhm.
stage. Like that's the moment where a certain survival instinct kicks in, because it's like, okay,
Yeah,
either those are
I
some
agree.
rich kids LARPing as revolutionaries, or it's fucking ISIS. Either way, it's very uncomfortable.
I think again, like it's sort of the same thing applies where if you're
ISIS.
going to dress in Antifa garb and stuff and crowd around somebody physically, you've kind of got to expect that people are going to see that as a violent thing. Like I can see why they thought it was a violent thing. Like
Mhm.
I can see why they immediately would arc up, because if you know what reputation Antifa has, especially around Sargon fans, you should kind of realize they think you're just there to beat him up, you know, and if that's not what you're there for, you need to be kind of careful about how you're doing this. Like, as if you're physically crowding around somebody and there's 6 dudes and, you know, you're crowding around 2 dudes, I can see how that's threatening. So yeah, I think that was a big mess from the start. No one would have even heard of that fucking talk if Antifa hadn't gone there. And if anything, this was a PR win for him because,
Oh,
you know,
definitely.
I mean, the Antifa dickhead punched him in the fucking tit, you know, and he ends up
Oh,
holding up their flag at the end after he's basically they all got beaten the shit out of. So
he never
just-
hit him. By the way, Sargon never took any blows. They did get up in his face and they did try to grab his microphone from him. But
I
lucky,
thought they punched him in the
no. People were saying that, but fucking, it was quickly Sargon and people quickly clarified. He's like, I suffered no violence, but they were right up in his face. It was only those people in the front row that started exchanging blows with each other and stuff like that. But I do love the idea about, you know, dressing up in your black outfit and whatnot with your megaphone and running into the room and just going, "Debate me, faggot!"
Oh man, I'd love to do that. That'd be so great. If any of these YouTubers in Australia are totally doing that, just getting an Antifa gear with a fucking microphone and being like, "Fucking debate me!"
I will Shrek you on stage.
I'll
yeah, I can
destroy
appreciate
you.
that.
I'm gonna do that. Basically, I'm gonna have a table that doubles as the sign, and I'm gonna have 2 people carrying the table around with me, and 2 folding chairs, and we're gonna sit down and we're gonna talk this out. God damn it! Principles are on the line. Black people. Ooh.
Some people in the chat are talking about this whole words of violence thing. I just want to clarify. I don't believe that words are the same thing as violence, and I think it's actually kind of counterintuitive to say that, because then people are just going to get confused and be irritated with you. So I just wanted to clarify that, because I've seen that like a lot in the chat, like this whole violence, or words of violence thing. I just want to clarify that's not my position.
Oh, that's actually one of the things I would have asked you a bit later about the cultural reproduction, if norms and ideologies can be violence. But thanks for clearing it up. So, I would actually like to extrapolate one of the earlier points about engaging with the other side to the real world. It seems to me, and I probably have a very biased data set, that in real life, the quote-unquote left, to use an umbrella term, likes disrupting even peaceful events, even rather sort of quote-unquote harmless events, while the quote-unquote right, and that's a whole lot of quote-unquote, I'm sorry, while the quote-unquote right is not really keen on that. So, for example, I'm personally not aware of a single instance where say, feminist speech or feminist podium discussion was interrupted by MRAs. Quite a few MRA discussions that were interrupted by feminists, to the point where it was to the point where those events were shut down. Do you have a similar perception of that?
Yeah, I mean, I do think there is probably more of it on my side of politics as far as like shutting down speech, but that said, I don't really know much about feminist talks that happen, so possibly there are talks that get shut down from feminists. I think I did actually see something where it was some women's bookshop or something that got I think raided by some people who were violent, but I can't remember now because it was all so long ago. So I think that was like a few years ago. I saw a post about that. So I think it has actually happened, but I feel like the right wing censors the left in different ways, like flagging down videos, and that's more the far right. And again, hashtag not all, but it doesn't require all right wingers to go out and flag a video for the video to get taken down. So ultimately, you know, it doesn't matter if not all, because you know it's happening. I mean, it matters as in like I don't think all right wingers. So, but I'm just trying to be clear here because I feel like people tend to have these misunderstandings where it's almost like they intentionally will take the worst possible meaning from what I say. So I try to be a bit careful, but probably too much so because I can anticipate how badly people take things that I say.
Oh yeah, I mean you're the devil. Let's be completely honest here, right? You're
like
oh,
people
Jesus.
make these assumptions like I'm just this callous, horrible person, and everything I say they'll twist it to mean the worst possible thing, and it just gets exhausting because I'm always trying to stay one step ahead of it and go, wait, no, I didn't mean it like that. When any reasonable person would just kind of assume that, but yeah, I don't know. I need to just stop worrying about what these people say because they clearly don't care what I actually think, and so I shouldn't.
I
Really
mean, to me, I experience a very similar situation in a sort of left sphere where I already have a certain degree of like there is unarguably a subset of people that thinks that I'm a crypto fascist, that I'm just trying to promote fascism for some. I don't judge. To me, it's a really interesting social experiment to watch those people and learn something from their behavior. Like maybe you could do the same, just watch and learn.
Yeah,
It's interesting.
I think it's probably because of the guilt by association thing where, you know, you have some similar talking points to some of the people there, but not quite like on the level they have it. I hope that doesn't come across badly. Just like, you know, the sort of concerns you have about Muslims, I think yours are more based on, you know, experience and things that are based in reality to a degree. Whereas, you know, the alt-right, they kind of, like, I don't know, I feel like they blow shit way out of proportion. Like, the way they talk about Muslim people just sounds a bit hysterical to me. Like, I'm not saying there's no problems, but I feel like the truth's somewhere in the middle. But I guess it might be because of some of the company you keep, because some of the people you're associated with have said some things that people don't really like.
That's really interesting. Would you share this opinion?
Not really. I think like it. I don't know. Like some of the people that you hang out with, I think some of them have said some things that either I feel like they've been influenced by some alt-righters, but I don't think they necessarily are alt-righters. It depends. It depends who we're talking about. So I think some of them, like this whole cultural Marxism thing, did come from the alt-right, but it's kind of just something that has suddenly become a part of everyone's vocabulary, even if they're not alt-right. So I think the lines have been blurred because the alt-right has normalized a lot of things that weren't around before, and they've put language into people's vocabulary that wasn't there before. And it's not that these people agree with the alt-right, it's that there is a degree of influence there. And I guess some people, like, to what degree that influence is there or isn't there really depends on your perspective, I guess. I wouldn't say you're all
The
right,
point of
but
cultural
yeah.
Marxism is a really interesting one to me because I've made one of my early big videos was actually a response defending the need to use proper definitions when talking about, for example, Marxism. And I've been very sort of vocal and very consistent about my criticism of the term cultural Marxism because it's like a very unfortunate term, and I genuinely don't like it. And I would even go as far as to say that a good chunk of what is constructed as this boogeyman of cultural Marxism
Gender
in the context
communism.
of Frankfurt School is actually really interesting. Like one of my absolutely favorite chapters that I've ever dealt with is the chapter or is in the book The Dialectics of Enlightenment by Adorno and Horkheimer on the culture industry. And that is essentially what many people perceive to be a sort of foundation stone of quote unquote cultural Marxism. So with me being very sort of vocal about no, I don't accept the idea of cultural Marxism, and I think we need proper definitions of Marxism. Shouldn't that override any sort of association that I hold with people that, for example, believe in the
It's not so
conspiracy
much
concept?
it's not the concept really. It's more that you can tell where people are getting their influences by the language they use, and it's true for me too.
Mhm.
Like the fact that I use words like problematic or things like that, you can tell what circles I'm in based on some types. I think it's just you can tell if somebody's using these bullshit terms like cultural Marxism, what their circles are.
Sorry.
I only say
Sorry. Can I
sorry.
interrupt you? This is a tech issue thing. Layman, do you hear her cut out a wee bit every now and again?
Very, very rarely.
It could be my Australian internet.
Yeah, just there when she was talking, could you hear things cutting out a bit while she was talking?
Not really, actually, not in that case.
Oh, weird.
Yeah. Basically, I think cultural Marxism is a bullshit term because if you look at what Karl Marx believed, it was not very progressive, and yet cultural Marxism is assigned to progressivism. Because like there are quotes from Karl Marx talking about some really racist shit. He says, if you hear his opinions of Jews, it's pretty pretty racist shit. Like he was very racist. I don't understand why he gets associated with social progressivism and cultural Marxism. Like what's cultural Marxism? I don't understand. So it's just kind of weird how they're using it, and that's why I think it's a bullshit term. But yeah, I think it's more like it shows what circles you're around if you start picking up on language like that more than so it's, I guess it's more like I don't know any specific terms you might have used, but I know that there are friends of yours who've said things that are parroted from alt-right talking points, and it's not that I think you're alt-right, or I don't even necessarily think your friends are alt-right, but I can see where some of the suspicion might come from in some cases.
Right. Okay. That's a fair point. I can understand that. There actually is a really relevant super chat to this
Yeah.
concerning you by
Oh.
Blue Bubble. This is for a ranting feminist. Does it annoy you that other femmes get mad at you for being friends with Shu? Do you think the left has a problem with guilt by association?
Yes and yes. Yes, it really does annoy me because people sort of they want me to very publicly call out you on every disagreement, but that's really not how it works when you get to know someone. Because I feel like if I start calling her out and all that, then that sort of comes off a bit hostile and aggressive. Like it's not really the way I like to do things. And they sort of also will bring things she says to me like, I don't like this thing, change it, kind of thing. And I'm like, look, I don't control what she says and doesn't say. At the end of the day, we're going to have fundamental disagreement positions on things. And I feel like what I get annoyed with is that everyone you're friends with, you agree with. But, in reality, there are people who disagree on lots of things who've been friends for years in real life, and that can happen quite often.
I mean, I will even go as far as say that it is essentially the norm that you will probably largely disagree with people, and that sort of segregating you into friendships based only on political ideology, for example, is actually extremely dangerous.
Yeah, and I think it actually leads to a lot of these harmful misunderstandings on the other side, because most often what happens when I'm talking to somebody about feminism is I get this like, oh, but it's not your feminism I have a problem with, it's this other elusive thing. And it's kind of frustrating because like I often feel like I'm fighting against a straw man rather than what I actually believe. And so I think actually friendships with the other side are a good thing because it means that you're at least if you do disagree with me, you'll disagree with what my actual beliefs are, not a sort of mutated version of them that's this horrible, annoying thing. Does that make sense?
Oh, it does. Okie dokie.
Yeah, I think it goes the same for the other side as well, because I think there are some misconceptions my side, broadly speaking, has of the other side, and I think that these building bridges helps both of us to understand each other better. And I think Shu's helped me to understand a lot of things, where the other side's coming from, and I think vice versa. You know, I think in the end it's led to both of us having a better understanding of where the other one's coming from, even if we don't agree. And so I really do hate the sort of, you know, the people who freak out at me about it. And actually, there was something really ironic that happened recently. There was someone having a go at me for being friends with her, calling her transphobic, but in their Twitter history, they made fun of Blair White for supposedly having big shoulders, and this person said that she looked like Dave Rubin, and it was like, okay, so wait, you can be transphobic to trans women as much as you want, but I can't be friends with somebody who previously made a video that wasn't so great about non-binary people. You know, like, do you see the conflict here? Like, it's just ridiculous. So I feel like some of these people are just full of shit and just looking to have an argument.
To be fair, in the video with Dave Rubin, Red Pill Black, and what's it called, Blair White, Dave Rubin was not the man in that relationship. Let's put it that way.
Yeah,
that was a joke.
Have you seen, by the way, Claudia?
No, I haven't.
It's one of the saddest things I've ever seen. And there are, I think there are even videos where it's just sad music playing and slowly zooming in Dave Rubin's face because it's just
was
he
that
lost
with
control. He lost control.
Candice and Blair debating, actually? Was that it?
I think so. Yeah.
Oh yeah. Actually, yeah, that's true. I did see that. Fuck, that was amazing.
Just
oh
the
man,
two of them yelling at each other and just Rubin being
Oh.
completely powerless. Like, you might be gay,
Oh,
but
and
you have no
Candice
power
was being
here.
so bitchy. Candice was like trying to play it off like she was being like, you know, oh, but I'm just being a conservative by pointing out that you're trans and I'm not going to respect your pronouns because I don't want to confuse my audience. It's like,
Oh, no,
yes, your audience is going to see this woman and be very confused when you're saying she and her.
Everybody knew what that was. She was being a cunt. That was a fucking awful way to fucking start a conversation with something. That was basically whipping at the fucking blade, you know, and saying, "Let you go and die."
Yeah.
Oh, by the way, I'm not going to refer to them as a woman because, you know, like, get fucked. Wow, you have no common courtesy for someone's identity when they're directly right there in front of you. You're scum.
Yeah, like there's to be honest, I really don't get that sort of section of right wings. It's not every, but there is this section that's like, oh, how dare you make me say your pronouns? Like, I don't understand. Like, if something, I don't see why it's so hard to just call them that. Like,
I think that
I don't know.
there might be this sort of strong anti-authoritarian streak there that it is perceived as a sort of social necessity to use the term, and therefore I will rebel against it. But at the same time, I think it really comes down to the context. If I'm very certain that the absolute vast majority of people that are sort of hesitant or rather hostile to using pronouns, preferred pronouns, would come around if you were to approach them and be like, hey, politely, could I please ask you to use my preferred pronouns? And I think that the vast majority of people would do that because, like, everyone knows my name by now, like Alex, everyone knows it, but everyone still calls me Layman because it's like my quote-unquote preferred name. I don't want to equate those things. I definitely don't want to do that. But I think that a sort of, voluntarism plays a big part in this, I think.
I guess the thing is, like, it mostly, I mean, I don't know, because I think it'd be rude if I just started calling you Susan, like, and you were like, oh, please don't call me that, and I just went, no, fuck you, you can't tell me what to do.
To be honest. Like, I don't mind if you want to call me Susie. I don't mind.
Okay, Susie.
Call me Susan, spank me like a bitch.
Can't believe you said this. That's horrible.
But like, yeah, it's just I don't understand the whole like don't make me use the pronouns. And like, I don't know, like even legally, there's not much of a thing about it because C16 didn't even mention pronouns. Because I was looking at C16, I was looking for it. I looked for it. I was like, okay, where's the thing about the pronouns? Where is it? And it's not there. It's just adding trans people into the groups you can't be hate speechy towards. Like, that's not a big deal. And yeah, it is kind of harassment if you decide you don't want to call a trans coworker by she and her or whatever if she's a trans woman. If you decide, no, I'm going to call you a man just because I'm being a dick, like, yeah, you're probably going to get fired for that. That's just kind of because you're being an asshole. Like, it's not about, yeah. Also, I've probably started a meme now, like with Susie. So I apologize, Layman, but
that's
yeah.
Layman, what the fuck is happening in your background? What the fuck is Layfot doing? Control your woman.
Well, what's happening?
Just that horrendous background noise from your end.
What background noise?
Oh no, it's from my end, sorry.
I'm watching the stream and I'm seeing Layman's voice light up when he was talking before, and I'm just like, Layman, you're making so much noise. What's wrong with you, you fuck?
Sorry, it's from my end. I can't really do anything about it.
Naka is being Scottish again.
I'm sorry, Claudia. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. I just assumed Layman is gay.
I kinda am, to be honest. But that's the topic for another day. Like, now, Claudia, we've been going on for a while now. I would like to pound some super chats because I am poor as can be, and then I would like to move into the last segment of the stream. Is that okay with you?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay. Nicholas Ramsey asks you, what are your thoughts on the gender education gap, Claudia?
Oh right, yeah, I think I saw this one go by. Yeah, I don't really know if it's more like because people sort of assume this is a discrimination thing or a bad thing, but I mean, in my country, when you study for a trade, you're not doing the same kind of tertiary education you would like uni, and you can do an apprenticeship here. So is it that guys are going in like plumbing or in building and stuff like that? Like, because I feel like some of that difference is probably just because of the different kinds of qualifications. Like if you be a mechanic here, you don't go to university to be a mechanic. You get a certificate and then you get an apprenticeship. So I feel like some of this might not be at the whole picture. Like, cause they're just like, oh, more degrees for women equals good, less degrees for men equals bad. And it's kind of not looking at the nuance of the situation because not all careers need a degree. In fact, some degrees are completely useless.
That is actually a really interesting point because in Germany, starting from 2012, I think, women made up the vast majority of, for example, university students. And there are many very well-paid fields currently being dominated by women, namely biology, law, medicine, languages, and something else. And it's super interesting that is very often not talked about in a broad social context. But the fact that men are still holding dominant position in, for example, math, engineering, that is still a big point of contention in German society. Is it similar in Australia?
Yeah, I haven't really looked into the stats on education, but I mean, just through anecdotes, I know that there's a lot of men in, construction and things like that, like trades. Women that go into trades tend to do things like that are technically trades, like doing hairdressing or that kind of thing, just if we're looking at demographics. So I feel like there's, like if you want to go into nursing or childcare, you need a degree for that. So I feel like here it's more a difference in the kinds of qualifications you need. But yeah, it is interesting though. I didn't really know women were dominating in Germany as far as law and this other stuff. But again, could it be that, the different kinds of qualifications you need for different kinds of jobs and men just being more attracted to things like, being a mechanic where you get a different kind of qualification?
Oh yeah, certainly. Like the motivations, I did not mean to imply anything about the motivations. It was just a very sort of surface level descriptive statistic, right? Okie dokie. The next thingy is by November Mind. Again, a question for you: are you a sex positive or a negative feminist?
I generally say sex positive, but I think there's a bit of a false dichotomy between between sex positive and sex negative. I think that there are feminists who get described as sex negative who still make some good points here and there about some of the things they're talking about. So I do dislike when there are sex positive feminists who completely write off what a sex negative feminist is saying because of the different approach, when I feel like there's still some value to what they're saying. So I'd say I'm sex positive, but I also think that sometimes, you know, a sort of middle approach can be a good idea, so you can hear out both sides of this, because the sort of quote unquote sex negative side, sometimes it's not sex negative as such, it's more critical of like how we present women in the media, for example. Like when you consider how hypersexual a lot of the presentation is, I think it is interesting to question how this might affect how young women see themselves. Like, are young women going to see these hypersexual women in media and think that they need to be like that to be desirable or to be interesting or whatever? Like, I think it is interesting to at least ask the question. And so I guess in that way, I'm not entirely one or the other, but I'd say more leaning towards sex positive, because I don't think that it's inherently harmful to have sexual representations of women in media. I just think maybe there is such a thing as too much.
Okay, I think that's a fair point. I can understand that. Also, like, a few people already messaged me. I should make one thing clear. I'm not here to debate you, and that's specifically meaning the audience. I'm not here to shrek you into non-existence. I'm here to give you a platform and to essentially learn what you're all about. And some people have been very vocal to me, mostly in private, screaming at me why I'm not debunking you and stuff like that. And I appreciate your concern, but this is not the platform for this. This is basically learning feminism 101 from a feminist.
Yeah. I imagine probably set off a couple of people. See, I don't really think anything said is that extreme, but sometimes people get like really pissed off, and it's just like, I don't know, I get kind of put off by the sort of overreactions on the other side sometimes, where I'll say something that's not that extreme, and then sometimes people just get super angry about it, and I'm just like, whoa, okay. Yeah, anyway, did you want to go through more super chats?
Yeah, if that's okay with you.
Yeah, it's fine.
No, I understand that it is mostly sort of boring for you, but there are quite a few questions for you, and I sadly have to make a little bit of money. And so, Claudia, if it's really not okay for you, right, just drop me a message, and I'm just gonna kick you and say that your internet died. Okay. Good. Okay. Master Stu says, "Lovely to hear a sound feminist. Also, Claudia, what made you become a feminist in the first place? And great stream again. Layman/Nugger, talk soon." So yeah, what made you become a feminist?
Well, for years I sort of took on the feminist label, but I never really thought about it. Yeah, I think women should be equal. And I think somebody was quite critical of my attitudes towards things, because I used to do things like slut shame women and do some really shitty things. And so they were like, what the hell? I mean, you know, that's a pretty anti-feminist position or whatever. And I'd be like, what? No, I'm a feminist. And then because of their critical attitudes, it sort of got me to look into it. And I read about a lot of things, and I kind of had a bit of a weird start to feminism, because I think I was just kind of online a lot at the time, and I was really pissed off at the world at the time, because I'd had a few really negative experiences with certain things. I was just a bit pissed off. So anyway, I joined this group that turned out to be radical feminists and TERFs and these people. By the way, TERF isn't a self-identity. They reject that. They go, oh no, we're gender critical. But anyway, they like had some really awful views on things, that group, because enough, I reckon. But I ended up taking on some of their stupid views on trans issues, but I then got into more intersectional sort of feminism. And yeah, just kind of bounced around with that kind of thing, read a bit of the feminist literature, and yeah, that's basically how I got into it.
So largely sort of organic, slowly easing into it, seems like it.
Yeah, like it wasn't like it wasn't like what people are saying today with like the, oh, school teachers are programming the children to become feminists. Like, I'd always passively identified as a feminist. I just didn't really have any idea of it being like an ongoing thing. I just thought, yeah, it's just because women are equal, right? Like, yeah, men and women should be equal. Of course I'm a feminist. Like, but it was only when I actually started reading about it and having a true understanding of it that I was probably more of a like proper feminist.
So the next thingy is by November Mind. So if a woman doesn't remember the tape, it didn't happen because the baby. So it's okay to kill/mutilate. I think that's referring to our talk about
Yeah.
abortions.
Yeah, no, that wasn't really what I meant. It's just like the I'm sorry, it's just such a funny comparison to me. Like, I just mean more like the fetus is not even like at the point where you're getting an abortion, it's like it's barely even a month in, isn't it? Like isn't it 24 weeks? It's like
It
like
depends from country to country. I think in
know.
Germany it is up to 3 months, but I'm not entirely certain.
Yeah, and like at that stage though, it's barely even a brain. Like that's my point. Is like it's not about memories really. It's more like that was just an example of how simple a life form it is at this stage. Like it's barely functional. So to me, for me, it was more that point that it's barely functional. It's just this
I mean,
thing.
to be completely honest, so am I, but I hope that no one really wants to rape me. That would make me very sad.
Yeah, so yeah, the point wasn't you have to be able to remember things to be a real person, because otherwise people with memory disabilities would be real people. So that's not really what I was getting at. But yeah, that I hope that answers the question.
I think so. The next one is by Jared Jacqua. See, maybe because other feminists aren't joking. I suppose that's in reference
I
to our
remember
talk
this.
about.
Yeah, I saw this go past. It was in reference to me saying that I can't have a sense of humor, anti-SJWs. Like, I get that some people are pretty extreme on my side, but I think it's pretty fucking, obvious sometimes that I'm kidding. And I find a lot of these examples of these crazy feminists, a lot of them are anti-SJW parody feminists that get taken seriously. Like Cassidy Boone, she's not real; she's a character, and it's bad satire. So it's funny because people still pass around Cassidy Boone videos and go, "Look at this crazy feminist." So it's I don't even have full control over that either. Like, yeah, of course there are going to be idiots who are feminists. Like, there are idiots on all sides of politics, no matter what, and I don't have any ability to reel that in or change that. So it's just kind of irritating when it's like, I feel like I'm almost expected to control what people on my side are saying, and it's like I can't. There are people on my side who are flat out idiots, and I'll never be able to stop that. So
Wow,
it's
that's not very
yeah.
commune of you. Can't
No,
believe you said this.
but I think anyone would say that there are people who are on their political side who are idiots. Trump supporters, Hillary supporters, whatever your side is. There are going to be people on your side that are really dumb.
Oh yeah, there are dumb people everywhere.
Yeah, like you probably, don't name names, but you probably got some skeptics you think are idiots.
Oh, I wear those things on my sleeve. Everyone knows exactly who I've got my issues with.
No, fundamentally, and I'm back by the way. What's it called? Fucking. The way I see it is there's just cancer in people everywhere. Like fucking, there's cancer
Yes,
on both sides. Like, there's just there's a bunch of pretentious people on side that I fucking despise and whatnot. But there's good guys everywhere, and it just breaks my heart when the tribalism shit just breaks everybody down. You know? That's why I hang about.
Yeah, because it ends up with two strawmen fighting each other very often, as Layman previously, like this sort of idea of like strawmen fighting each other. Like, I don't think feminists are crazy people generally. I mean, there are crazy people who happen to be feminists, but again, anti-SJWs are all a bunch of crazy people. But there are definitely those people in the circle.
So the next one is by Darth Slater 1. To everyone, what is your opinion on Elliot Rogers, aka the Supreme Judge? I think it's a shame that mental issues are not treated properly. And he should have had proper treatment. And that's really all I would like to deal with Elliot Rogers in this stream. Well, if that's okay with the two of you.
I just want to say, rip in peace, Nibba. Fucking, you got your 72 virgins.
Thank you, Naka. What would I do without you? Jared Jonqua, BuzzFeed, HuffPo, etc. are SJ's biggest enemy. I suppose
social justice. Yeah.
Right. I mean, there is a very good point to be made there. I find it's very similar with, for example, Paul Joseph Watson when it comes to the right, because he gives an extremely easy vector of attack when you want to go against the right. All you have to do is to say, hey, you see this really big person on the right is this Paul guy? Well, it turns out he's retarded. It turns out everything he does is stupid. It turns out he doesn't have a single valid argument. And suddenly the entirety of the right, or at least a huge chunk of it, may be suddenly facing sort of crisis. They may suddenly be kind of quote unquote debunked with very little effort. And it's a shame to see that an entire ideology is basically suffering from a few figureheads that are just doing a very poor job. And I think it's not as much with figureheads on the left, but with publications like the aforementioned BuzzFeed and HuffPo, where it's like, why should you even like deal with academic feminism? Why should you read Beauvoir or something like that when you can just point to HuffPo and say, hey, those guys are silly?
Yeah, I think that's tough. Like, I think also, like, in fairness to these publications, there are a lot of people working there. So some of the people working there probably do have a brain, and there are some decent things that they'll publish every now and then, but they absolutely publish some tripe every now and then, and it makes me embarrassed because I go, oh, great, here we go again. Here's another thing that people are gonna, like, oh, like the manspreading thing. I don't even often anti-SJWs end up bringing it up a lot because of these fucking publications, because they made these into big deals. And I think they did it to generate clicks because they know that people are getting pissed off about this, because they're like, oh yeah, all these people are going to get outraged about how dumb this whole thing is, and they're going to click on our website a lot. And so it just it's the same with like interrupting and things. Like, these stupid things are just going to keep coming up, and then I'm going to have to be like, yeah, I don't really care about any of this. You know,
outrage marketing is very profitable. Very profitable.
My personal favourite is fart rape. I just want to say that. And also, I have a great question, Lemon. You'll be proud of me. So, in that case, Claudia, don't make that noise. Claudia, in that case, what would you consider a good feminist publication?
To be honest, I don't really know of any mainstream ones are any good. Like, I think that often when you see something good, it's an individual person's work who happens to be on a big publication. It's not really the publication that's good; it's the person's work that's good. You know, like, because there are articles on BuzzFeed or HuffPo that have been good. It's just that, you know, it's in a sea of shit, and that's kind of the problem with a lot of things I see on quote unquote feminist publications, is that, you know, among all the shit you'll get a good article, but you've got to sift through all this crap like, yes queen, yes bae, and it's just like, oh yeah, like people who celebrate, you know, historical figures just for being even like great people, like it really really bothers me. Like there are people who are known to do Like, and it's also like when you see people who like, yes, Queen, at like Theresa May, or like these conservative women who've done terrible things, like Margaret Thatcher, like, and it's like, no, just stop.
If you like Theresa May just because she's a woman, you're doing something wrong. You're doing feminism wrong. She is awful. But again, sorry, Layman, but it was a good question. Fuck you.
Admittedly, it was a good question. I was really worried you're gonna ask us something really stupid as always, but that was a good question. Thank you.
As always, but that question wasn't bad, so it wasn't as always. Get debunked.
Karl Popper, is that you? Karl Popper? Oh no, no, please no. Right. We only have a few to go. Jara Janquois says this $5 is for Nucker's statement about how they only go after stuff that's popular to get attention and create outrage clicks. There we have it. Kaka, I owe you $5.
No, you don't.
Nicholas Ramsey. I was a tad too vague. I was referring specifically to the gender achievement gap in education. Sadly, I have no data on that. Do you have any on that?
No, I don't. Oh wait, is that more
No, I
getting
do have a piece of
PhDs
data.
or masters?
I think he's specifically referring to how many by gender start studying and how many finish studying in the end. That would be my idea.
I guess it's just to be honest, I think that retention of young people just generally. Sorry, my cat just doing something funny.
Say hi to a cat from me.
Okay, hi cat.
Thank you.
From Layman. Yeah. Anyway.
Oh
God, what was I even saying?
Shut up, Naka. It's layperson. Thank you.
Yeah. Layperson.
Wait, no.
So I think there's a problem with retention generally at universities, just because when you're young, you get sort of thrust into making the decision of what do you want to do for the rest of your life, and you're really too young to know often. Like, I only developed a love for certain things as an adult that I didn't really like when I was a teenager. So I think that that's sort of a problem as well, but I don't really know what could be specifically making men drop out more. It would be worth looking into. I wish I could say more about it, really. I don't have much to say. I think it should be addressed, though.
I just dropped out of life because I was smart enough when I was younger to realise the futility of anything, and then just gave up, to be honest. And then I used to be smart, but then I ruined it through substance abuse. Now I'm just the remnants of what I could have been.
Okie dokie. The next one is by Michael Walters. Given a quote-unquote perfect education system, is direct democracy a possibility, in brackets, or even an ideal? Why or why not? It has nothing to do with our current talk, but Claudia, what's your take on that?
Yeah, I'm not really sure what an ideal education system looks like. I'd like to think it would improve a democracy, if anything. Maybe I'm not understanding the question, because I don't really see how they're linked. I
think it's coming from a sort of sorry for interrupting you there. I think
No,
it's
no,
coming
go
from
on.
a perspective that's kind of shared, or rather common in my niche on YouTube, where a representative democracy makes sense because the absolute vast majority of people is uneducated. They're uneducated on fucking everything. And I think the person is suggesting that, hey, if we had a perfect educational system where everyone was educated, couldn't we get rid of the representative part and instead go straight for a direct democracy? I think that's the point.
Oh yeah. To be honest, I don't know the difference between a direct or a representative one. I understand representative. I don't really know what the difference is though. So
wow,
I feel a bit dumb now. Wow. I feel dumb now because I don't know what that term means.
To be fair, it's perfectly fine. Like people outside of like neighboring countries that like, for example, in Europe, you really learn about direct democracy mostly because Switzerland has elements of a direct democracy. But I would understand that if you're from Australia, you probably don't interact with any direct democracy, really. So
honestly,
no
I've
worries.
tried to take politics subjects in high school, I remember, but they were so unpopular. Only 5 people wanted to do it, so it wasn't a unit in the end because no one wanted to study it
That's
except
actually
for
really
me and
sad.
4 other people. Yeah, so I really wanted to learn about politics, but me and 4 other people did, so they didn't go through with the subject in the end, and I was really sad because I wanted to learn about it. Because it was
I've
like
got
about international politics, and I don't know
Mhm.
much about international politics and didn't at the time, so I wanted to learn about it because I was like, that sounds interesting. And yeah, so I had to switch that unit out for something else because it was so unpopular.
I actually know the
RIP in
feeling.
peace.
Yeah, I know the feeling. Like during my bachelor days, there was like, oh Jesus, there were 2 big things I really wanted to take. I did, and in one thing, I was the only person interested in it, and another thing, we were like, I think 6 people in the end that turned up, and the first session went all right. Like our docent was like, "Hey, I'm gonna try to box this through, and maybe we'll be able to do this." But like the second session, only 3 people showed up, and the rest just without even like letting him know anything. They just said, no, we're just not gonna do this anymore. But I have
Mm.
something to cheer you up. My lace face. I ship Shu and Claudia.
Everyone does. Even Shu and Claudia do.
Can I mention that thing I was wanting to mention for ages about how I know Claudia?
Sorry?
uh,
It
let me
cut out
finish
for a
one last
second.
thing up, and then you can
Oh,
do your thing, right?
Is it the
right.
big old $100 one that you just got?
Yes, it is. We got $100 by Nicholas Ramsey. Nicholas, thank you so much. You just bought me food. I super appreciate that. Um, I clarify my response to your my issues with MRA's video. I must leave now. Anyway, I enjoyed the stream. I'll
What
clarify
was the
in my
previous?
response to your my issues with MRA's video.
What was the previous thing for? Just so I understand. Was this about the education thing? The
Yes, oh,
education gap?
the gap,
I
yeah.
Oh, okay. Well, I didn't know about that. So that's interesting. I will look into that. Because I guess I don't have a problem with MRAs in theory, and I think I touched upon that in the video. But
Mhm.
it's more in practice that so much of it is about bashing feminism that it makes it hard for me to get behind it because I am a feminist. So, like, if they
Yeah,
had something that was neutral on feminism, I could totally get behind that. But it's the anti-feminism that I'm not really down with.
Can I ask how you feel about like the red pill and the whole saga revolving around that?
Oh, the red pill, the movie,
Yeah,
right? Yep.
and how that
Um,
went down while it was being made.
well, I don't think she did an unbiased thing of this of the MRAs. I think it was quite biased, but I don't have a problem with somebody making a biased thing and trying to get it out there. Because she's free to do that. I guess like I wasn't really for the boycott thing or like for trying to shut it down in Melbourne. I think that was not the right move because honestly, that just sort of worked for fantastic marketing for her because now she can just go, this is the thing feminists don't want you to see. So I don't think it should have been censored, but I also don't think it's unbiased. Not at all.
But when she's saying that she was a feminist and she wanted to tackle the issue of how the the MRA movement is as bad as it is made out to be, and she wanted to do a video on that, and the backlash she got while speaking to those people. How did you feel about that whole thing and the way she changed over the course of that?
To be honest, I feel like it's just marketing. I'm very cynical about this, and maybe, people will call me out for this and say it's unfair, but I feel like how many women do you see getting on YouTube being like, I used to be a feminist, but now I'm not. I'm red pilled. I'm so woken up about this stuff. I don't identify as a feminist anymore. They're all nasty, mean people. Like, I don't know, it's fucking,
I completely
just
understand
wised
what you
up.
were saying, but the thing that I thought was
Yeah.
interesting was that she was already an acclaimed director of,
Yeah.
I believe it was a film about gay marriage.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I've seen that she has done feminist work, but again, like, was this somebody immersed in feminist ideology, or was this just someone who had a pretty casual interest? Like, because I don't know, I feel like some of the things that she found mind-blowing weren't mind-blowing to me and weren't news to me, like the idea of women getting custody over men, to me isn't shocking because, yeah, the stereotype exists that women are better caregivers, but that's sexist. So, that's a sexist stereotype of women that's biting men in the ass. Like, I don't think that's contradictory to, whereas she sort of saw that and then immediately had this whoa reaction. And I think also that these MRAs were putting their best foot forward and weren't, showing her the awful shit they've said. And like Paul Elam has said some disgusting things, and she never really pressed him on that.
That man is a fucking nutcase.
And I feel like she presents him almost like he's person, and I do have a problem with presenting these crazy people with shitty ideas like they're these normal people.
To be fair, it seemed like after the talk with Jim, he went on a downward slope of lunacy.
But... Yeah, absolutely. Elam had a pretty steep drop after that.
Yeah. I think he was always a bit like that, though. You look at the shit he said. Like, he said he would, say that a rapist was not guilty, and like even in the face of lots of evidence, just because he doesn't believe the court systems are fair. And it's like, that's fucked, that's fucked up, and people are like, oh, but I would, I can find this example of somebody who said the same thing about black people because the court systems are unfair and all this. I'm like, so I disagree with that person too and think it's a fucked up thing to say. Like, what's your point? You shouldn't be acquitting people of crimes they committed because of your ideology. That's fucked up. And there's quotes like that go back ages.
That's mongoloid. I can't recall the timing, but was that post Elam descent into fucking rock cancer?
I think it was post descent. I think so.
It was fucking ages ago. I mean, I don't know, like with this conversation with Jim, that was like 10 years ago at least. Around that, yeah, it was ages ago. He posted some crazy there were archives of it because he tried to delete a lot of this shit in hindsight because he realized how bad it looked. Even MRAs were saying, yeah, but dude, rape is bad, like I get that, false rape accusations are bad, but so is rape, right? Like, but this is the problem with Elam, is he seems to see the bigger evil as false rape allegations than actual rape happening. Like, he doesn't even seem to give a shit about that. He's like, nope, false rape allegations, that's more important. I mean, I find it fucked up because I don't say that false rape allegations don't matter or that, they're okay. So I think that would be fucked up. So, I don't see why it's okay for him to go around. Yeah, anyway.
No, I do think he'd let. I completely agree with you, but I still think the false rape allegation was bad. Like we saw on Twitter, where basically someone can imply that you are a rapist or whatever. Somebody can just say that on the Twitters, and that's it. You're right. Your life is fucking over. That's it. You're fucked.
Yeah, I do think there have been problems with the Me Too thing, like. With Aziz Ansari, I think it was, I don't really like the way that was framed because I don't think what he did was anywhere near on the level of something like Harvey Weinstein. If you're not familiar, wait, are you guys familiar with what happened there?
With who?
I think it was Aziz Ansari.
That absolutely does not ring a bell with me. You, Nucka?
No. Okay.
I'm hopeless with names. This isn't the radio host guy, is it?
I think he's a comedian guy, but anyway, this girl, she met him, they performed a bunch of sex acts, and he was too forceful about it or too forward and didn't really seem to care that she wasn't that into it. But it sort of got put in under the Me Too hashtag, and I feel like that was kind of implying something else, like he, forced her or something. But it sounds more like he was just not being very gentlemanly about it. Like, by all accounts, it doesn't sound like it was a great experience, but it wasn't like you couldn't really call it sexual assault even.
Just for my own context, this was an old story that was prominent for a bit. It was that radio guy that was taken into court for...
Oh no, he wasn't taken into court. Aziz, I'm sorry. Like, I don't think this went to court. This was just a 3,000 word. Alright, here we go. Babe.net. Aziz Ansari. I went on a date with Aziz Ansari. It turned into the worst night of my life. Like, I feel like that's kind of implying something else happened.
I think we're talking about two completely different things. The thing I'm talking about was an example where a radio presenter and stuff like that basically went on was accused of sexual allegations and stuff like that, and a bunch of other women came out as well, and none of the information they gave held up, and he got away with it, and people are like, this is a disgrace that he got away with it. And it just sounded like he was the kind of guy that fucked women and just he just fucked women for because he enjoyed fucking women. He didn't want anything more for it and whatnot, and just sounded like a complete fucking dickhead. But he wasn't a rapist, and none of the evidence held up. And oh god, what was his name? Oh.
Okay, I'm just posting this on Discord, some of the stuff from this, because I'm trying to go through it because it's really long, but it's hard to really tell what's going on here. Because basically, it sounds like he was being a bit ungentlemanly, but it doesn't. Like, she never said no at any point, or told him that she wasn't happy about this stuff. So I feel like it's, you have to say something. I mean, it's not that what he did was perfectly fine, but it's definitely not on the level of something like in the Me Too movement, that, like the other stories.
Yeah, exactly. But that's the problem with this thing. It's sensationalism. And there you go. Somebody in chat got me Gian Gomeshi. That's
Sorry?
what it was. Gian Gomeshi was the guy I was talking about. Where there was a whole thing where he got away with it. But the wrong choice of wording. He was found not guilty because the evidence just didn't hold up, and it just sounded like nonsense, and good stuff. If that's what they found.
Yeah, like in fairness to this article, I should point out that no one's been calling it rape, but the fact that it's being put alongside cases of rape, I think, is a bit, that's misleading. But I support the Me Too movement, of course. I just feel like this Aziz Ansari case is kind of like, nothing here really indicates that she really made this clear to him that she was not interested. Like, I feel like you kind of have to make it clear if you're not wanting something. You can't just sort of take it for granted that they'll know you're not comfortable. Like, and while you should be receptive to someone you're sleeping with, and you should be trying to make sure they're comfortable, it's also the responsibility of someone to say, hey, I'm not into this. And
hey, I'm really sorry to interrupt there, but I would like to keep it concise, and dealing with those single specific issues really is not tasty to me, not too spicy to me. Also, we've been going for about 3 hours.
Right, yeah.
We should probably kind of aim to wrap this up. Before people start mass leaving because I said wrap this up, you can find the first episode of this thingy on my Livestream channel. Just refresh this and check the description. And yeah, Claudia, is there any final statements you'd like to share with us? The stage is completely yours. If you want to shit talk me, there's your chance.
No, I don't really have any final statements, I guess. I thank you for having me on here. It's been really great. I'm really grateful for the platform to say my views. It's great to have an honest discussion about these things, even if we may not agree with each other. And I hope your audience doesn't mind, you know, that you've had me on and let me say my piece. Because I think they're pretty cool. They'll probably be fine.
I mean, to be fair, if they do mind, then they can fuck off, because my entire idea is, like, ideas matter more than any sort of disagreement. And if you can't handle talking to someone you disagree with, then there's a whole lot of channels that are far better suited for you than my channel. I wish you all the best. Thanks for support, but I don't think this is the right channel for you, to be honest.
By the way, I followed you on Twitter. Follow me back.
Oh, cool. I'll just.
If you don't,
Okay,
you're gonna have a debunked response video, and I'm gonna
Debunked.
I'm gonna destroy you. I'm gonna take you back to a time when you could beat a woman with a stick no wider than your own fuck.
Oh no.
Right, okie dokie. So, if you'd like to check out Renting Feminist, the link is in the description. Even though I don't believe I am responsible for my audience, I would politely ask you not to bully her, not even memeing or anything. Please be nice to her. She's been nice to us, so that should be. I don't know why I'm saying that. My audience actually is really chill with stuff, but just to be certain, you know, just to be sure. Right. Claudia, thank you so much for being here. Thank you so much for taking your time to talk to me about just random feminist stuff. I really appreciate this.
Oh, no worries. Thanks for having me on, and thanks for staying up so late. Sorry about that.
No problem at all. No problem. So for context's sake, it's 4 a.m. Where I am right now. That's completely fine. Completely fine. Right. Fuck off, Nuckelavee. Right. Nuckelavee is my co-host. If you'd like to check him out, it's in the description. We also host a Pathfinder game, which is basically D&D, but for what's the politically correct term for atypical neuroatypical? I just want to say, like, it's politically correct for retarded people.
Neuroatypical.
Yes.
No, I think that describes.
Man, your mic
Anyway,
is progressively worse.
But yeah, I think I understand I get what you mean.
It's Pathfinder for retarded people, and I'm sorry for using the term, but so right, and this is for this episode. There will be a third one later, probably next one. Yeah, if you want to, absolutely.
I just want to point out, I think it's disgusting we can live in a society where some woman basically, or anybody these days can basically write out like fucking 140 characters, and regardless of whether you did it or didn't do it, they just fucking end your life. I think that's absolutely disgusting. By the way.
Okie dokie. Thank you for your hot take. Right, and this is for this episode. Glad you tuned in. If you want to, you can shit talk me on Twitter, and as always, Babylon prevails, I suppose.
I've got balls of steel.